Welcome back, everyone, to Red Spotlight. We're back. Yes, I'm Alexis, and this is David, the show that brings you everything coming out of the world of movies and more. And today, we're gonna break down the drama. We're gonna break down the breakdown of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a complete and utter collapse, coming out of the box office this week with the Marvels opening to dismal um, reviews and very disappointing performance of all kinds. We're going to talk about that at length today here on the show, alongside a review for one of the year's most acclaimed films, Anatomy of a Fall. That is today's show on Red Spotlight number 463. Now, David, before we even get started, there are a couple of things that we should mention at the top. One of the more interesting, well, first of all, we should actually say this is the first show that we're doing since the SAG AFTRA strike has ended. So took a minute to get there. I'm not gonna go over the particulars because some of the stuff is really it's really hard to understand, but um by all accounts, the actors were able to make meaningful gains in residuals, and they were able to establish safeguards against AI, or at least safeguards on themselves for, from the risk of AI pushing them out, um, and moving toward a place where um, AI is doing a lot of work and actors would not be paid. So it seems like, and it was approved by an overwhelming vote, and it is over. The strike is over, and they were happy with it, and that's really good. And I want to take this moment when take a step back and look at the accomplishments of both the writer's strike and the SAG-AFTRA strike. They both work. They both worked tremendously well because it is inarguable in that both unions are better off for having gone on strike, because if they just took what the studios were willing to give them, which is absolutely nothing, and you really have to wonder, David, what are going to be the long-term ramifications um of this strike? Not in the way, though, that people are talking about it. Like, I think a lot of people are talking about it in the sense of like, oh, movies getting delayed, and projects being announced, and I'm and even some people are talking about the relationship between the actors and the studios themselves. I'm just wondering myself, um, in the age of, heightened social media that we live in, you really do have to wonder um about the damage that the AMPTP, all those studios, not just the CEOs, but the studios that they represent, you really have to wonder how much damage they caused themselves for this strike even happening in the first place.
Mhm.
And all the dirt that came out, really, I shouldn't even say that came out, that they themselves were just, you know, willfully airing out about like what their intentions were and their approaches to everything. Um, it makes you wonder how people are going to be uh looking at, and how they, treat the relationship with studios. I feel ultimately it is a cautionary reminder that people should not in any way, shape, or form think of corporations like Disney or Warner Brothers, especially these days, both of those, as their friends.
Mhm.
You can find a lot of what they create. You can find a lot of your personal identity in what a lot of what, comes out of those studios. That's fine. But you got to keep in mind that the way that this capitalistic system is set up is not for any of that kind of stuff. It's for them to make money.
Mhm.
And honestly, I would hope on some level this causes people to reflect on, like, wow, this particular business and those particular people are even shittier than I thought it ever could be.
Mhm.
Because ultimately, yeah, we just went through that. We just went through a strike where the studios didn't want to staff up the writers' rooms. They didn't want to pay for any writers. They didn't want to pay for any increases for the writers or the actors, even though that they didn't really have livable wages,
Mhm.
small time ones, I should say, of course, which is most of the people who were in those unions. Um, and they wanted to basically start the process of replacing actors by utilizing AI, not just to replace the actors, but then also to assist, quote unquote, in the writing or even replace the writers with it.
Mhm.
And it's just like when you take a step back from it, it really just it shakes you a little bit because
Yeah.
like, wow, this is so cartoonishly evil.
Yeah.
So cartoonishly evil that many of the stories that have come out of all of these studios um would criticize so easily, and yet in real life here you were, these freaking billionaire ghouls who were like, how dare you ask for more.
Mhm.
And again, they showed their cards every step of the way. Supposedly it was Bob Iger. Who knows? I mean, people think it was him, but Ron Perlman aired it out. I think brought sense to the anger that you know should have been directed at that comment about, like, the strategy in part was to drag this out as long as possible until people began to lose their homes. You had Reed Hastings from Netflix saying that a large part of this strike wasn't so much about, the particulars, but more about showing the actors and the writers who's the boss here, and to keep them in their place. Ultimately, this was just a petty power struggle for them.
Mhm.
But for the people on the other side, this was their livelihood. This was their work. And they should have fought every step of the way as they did, and they won.
Mhm.
And you know what? Going into the strikes, we were proud of them. We were happy that they were standing up for what they, thought that they deserved. But to be honest with you, I don't think many of us were very optimistic about what meaningful gains they would be able to make, considering how, especially lately, and especially with this particular industry that we cover, good ultimately seems to lose out quite often, if not all the time. So it was really just kind of hard to envision an outcome where both the writers and the actors would, I don't want to say get everything they wanted, because they didn't.
Mhm.
Personally, I think they should have, even though some people out there want to play fealty to this devil advocate situation where, like, the best deal is where no one's happy. Fuck that. The best deal is when the crappy, shitty, evil people lose.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, the AMPTP did a whole lot of losing even in those deals. They ultimately had no choice but to give in on some of these things because they um they can't do their work without writers. They can't do their work without actors. It just is the way that it is. And so it's a lot of things. It's hopefully inspirational for other guilds and other unions to do the same thing. I know is IATSE is the big one for visual effects, and they're trying their best to get all their people unionized and together for a strike in the next year or so. I know the Animation Guild is trying to, head in that direction as well because, for as crappy as writers and for as crappy as actors have gotten treated, you best believe that the visual effects artists and the animators themselves are literally at the very bottom of the totem pole.
Mhm.
At the very, very bottom of the totem pole, and they, of course, deserve better, and they should. And hopefully, that the wins that were made here by WGA and SAG are able to galvanize them to go in that direction as well, because there needs to be meaningful reform. There needs to be change all literally throughout the entirety of this industry in a multitude of ways. But one of the ways that it needs to start working a little bit better, at least in the meantime, are the livable wages that are not actually being produced right now that are needed for these people to continue doing what they do, which is the grunt work for a lot of these studios. Um, and it is again a reminder of just how very sad and just how cartoonishly evil
Mm.
a lot of these freaking billionaires are. This is ultimately why um, people should be very cautious about, the capitalistic society that we live in. Um, I remember back in 2020, I think it was 2020 or 2016, then presidential candidate Bernie Sanders was asked a question about, from the media during a debate, and he was asked about why are you saying that billionaires shouldn't exist? Maybe because when people become billionaires, they act like this. They treat like everything they treat human beings as collateral damage and disposable junk. Ultimately, Um, yeah, Bob Iger, David Zaslav, Reed Hastings, they quote unquote lost, but not really. How can you lose when you're that rich? You know?
Yeah.
That's a big point here too. So, David, before I move on, your thoughts on this entire debacle, which
Mm.
we haven't even gotten to some other adverse effects, which is how next year's schedule is going to be affected by it. Like again, it's just like crazy how we had a pandemic 2 years and then this strike happening, like, what a disruptive couple of years the 2020s have been already.
Hmm. No, yeah, I mean the whole thing was just um for me sad the whole time, just because like I don't understand how you can just look at your team here and say, "Nah, you don't deserve more." It's like, really, my guy? Like, what possible evidence do you have that AI is just gonna make you more money? It's gonna make you more movies, sure, but it's not gonna make you more money. Like, you need a person to work on this shit and actually like make it look great, be great. And so, I mean, I don't know how it's gonna. I mean, I know some people are really like speaking out now, going like, "Man, looking for these big studios, it's just, is it almost worth it?" you know. And I mean, I don't know what the heck is gonna happen after this. I mean, I hope some people are like take the chance to like do their own thing. I know some
Mm,
people probably did. Try to make their own movie, try to like get it out there as fast as they could. But I mean, who knows? But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that it's done. They got some good things out of it, um, both people, and um, yeah. I mean, I really don't know what to expect next from this, especially with movies coming out next year. I don't know how that's gonna fuck up the studios even more.
yeah. I mean, there's just so many more directions to go with it. Like for instance, it's always funny to point out the alt-right, um right wing YouTube crowd that complains about the woke agenda, quote unquote, um, as their problems with these studios. But again, it's just completely dismantling them once you realize not once did any of those people call on these studios to pay their writers more or their actors more. Not once did they criticize the practices of these CEOs to crush their workers. Um, that kind of further reveals
Hmm.
who you are and what side you're on,
Hmm.
and
And
um,
I mean, some of the arguments is like the oh my gosh, what's the word? The like the AMTP and what was the other one?
AMPTP, the studios.
Yeah, them like this whole strike is to keep whoever's still writing to stay there,
Uh-huh.
and they want to like complain that it's the shitty writers that are going to stay and everything. And it's like, okay, fine. Yeah, there's some bad writers here. We've seen a couple movies and shows that just had some bad writing and all, but they still don't deserve to suffer and be
Right?
and
They don't
like
deserve to be homeless.
yeah, be homeless, figure out if they're going to eat today or not and all that. It's like just back them up. Like
It's just like every step of the way. Again, like I don't like addressing that particular audience or that particular crowd every episode, but I feel it needs to be just highlighted because at every turn, they're always taking a very inhuman perspective. They always seem to be against humanity or the betterment of humans. Or if it doesn't affect them, they don't care ultimately. Um, and then the other thing is this, like, this was just this strike and the issues that um were the reason for why this even happened were big, you know, big fucking issues. But there's a whole bunch of other shady shit still going on. Like, for example, ever since David Zaslav came onto the scene and canceled Batgirl, it's been freaking open season. And basically, he ushered in a new era that is, in my view, very disgusting. This whole practice of shelving or canceling projects that are already in production for the sake of a tax break, therefore completely erasing that artist's work. Um, because other streamers like Disney and Netflix have started to do this, where projects that they either financed or acquired the rights to has just been disappearing from their services. And we have already spoken to the idea that there is this strategy being played by the companies in which um, they're going to begin removing, a bit of content here and there, raising the prices, um, because they seemingly are of the mind that that's somehow going to improve their prospects. Okay, but there was this pretty seismic um story that's really broiling right now, and I've shared some of this over to you guys on the Red Spotlight chat, but it's really important to bring attention to it because of how this particular case was different, and as it turned out, it was so egregious, and it's so brought out a backlash that Warner Brothers was forced to walk back that particular major decision. So in the last few days, it was reported that Coyote versus ACME, which was a film that centered around Wile E. Coyote, yes, that one, the very famous Looney Tune, suing the Acme Corporation because I'm not even joking here, suing the Acme Corporation because all of their products consistently failed.
hmm,
And that was the movie, which, by the way, what a brilliant
yeah,
idea for a
that's
movie.
that's so great. And you can literally show clips of like the past episodes with him and everything, and it's just be like one fail after another. It would have been hilarious. And also like I I mean, who doesn't love like the live action cartoon crossover type of movies? I mean, for Who Framed Roger Rabbit is still like one of
Yes.
the best. I haven't seen Looney Tunes back in action in a long, long time, but I definitely want to rewatch it.
I've always defended it. Peter
hmm
has always defended it. Kyle has always defended it. You can say that's 2000s nostalgia. I would say fuck off because Joe Dante is a great director, and Joe Dante also directed the amazing Gremlins 2, which is a masterpiece in its own right. It's a masterpiece of Looney Tunes comedy, basically. And then he directed a Looney Tunes movie with Back in Action. And then with this film, I'm sorry, it just writes itself.
Yeah.
Like it's and not and we weren't alone in thinking that because, and by the way, we're just talking about a premise.
hmm
But in actuality, And ultimately, what made this instance very different than the other occasions is this was done.
Yeah.
This was completely done on top of the fact that it was testing amazingly. So there was literally no reason to do this
Mm-hmm.
except David Zaslav just going like, I need my money now. I need my $30 million tax write-off. I'd rather have that than whatever the fuck this is.
Yeah.
And it's like, it also flies in the face of supposedly the logic he used the first few times of Batgirl not testing well,
Mm-hmm.
or, it not being done and everything. I mean, it calls into question retroactively those decisions. Were they really based on quality? No, they never were. They were.
Mm-hmm.
It was about getting a freaking tax write-off.
Yeah.
That's all this ever was about. And the thing is, like, I'm just happy that this happened. I mean, I'm happy that there was a backlash and people were like, "Fuck you,"
Yeah.
because for a lot of reasons. First, Warner Brothers, man, they really fucking like have dropped the ball
Mm-hmm.
with defending their core characters. Imagine if Disney treated Mickey, Donald, and Goofy the same way Warner Brothers has treated the Looney Tunes these last few decades.
Wait, they literally made it short, and one of the best moments is Mickey going to Waldo, is it? Being
Yes.
like, "Oh, hey, make room for him," like basically like showing respect to the original,
And you
like
mean
this.
Once Upon a Studio on Disney Plus?
Yeah, yeah, that short. It showed all that. You mentioned it too. Like all the characters were the same as they are in their movies, and it was super fun. You could have had that with this Coyote versus Acme
Mm-hmm.
movie, but you didn't. And then you canceled it. You canceled the one directed by James Gunn, the
Well,
guy who's
it was produced.
produced.
I don't think it was directed.
Oh, my bad.
He was
Okay,
involved, but
he
he
wasn't.
didn't direct it her firsthand.
You,
That's
you,
also surprising though.
yeah,
Like, it's a James Gunn produced thing, and you're gonna shelve that?
yeah. The guy who's running your DC movies. Like, why would
Right.
you? This dude can up and quit anytime he wants. You know that, right? And we will still love his movies. It's so stupid.
Yeah. And so it caused such a big uproar that there was a changing of the minds, shall we say. So they're still not going to put it in theaters. They're still also not going to put it on streaming. However, they are going to allow for the team to shop the movie around and see if any other distributor will be willing to put this up, which is not the best, but it is a considerable about face considering that they were going to just completely like scrap it. And
Mhm.
the day that this was announced, a lot of the people attached to the film or in Warner Brothers were in such open rebellion. They were literally like just like for instance, I think they like somebody dumped the filming of the film score on Twitter because like fuck it, because I mean just for any of it to have been seen.
Mhm.
Did you want to say something, David?
Oh, them letting someone else basically like show the movie. That's gonna be dumb because now that we know what happened, we're all gonna want to see it, and you're gonna lose even more money.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're done. you know, like literally because of what happened, everyone's gonna want to see it. They want to know like why exactly did you want to get rid of this? Why exactly did you not want to put this out? And then you're just gonna
Right,
lose all the
right.
money.
That's the thing. It's like it would be. I think people would be not so. Well, I shouldn't say that. I feel like in a way, despite the fact that it got good test scores, I'm thinking with this happening so close to the strikes, I don't know. People are on a roll. It's like, okay, we need to stop this because this is getting way out of hand. Let me read to you an excerpt from the Hollywood Reporter based on what we're talking about here. The Coyote cancellation roiled the creative community, perhaps even harder than Batgirl and Scoob, because those had been positioned as a one off change in strategy. how they were presented, never to happen again. So because when both of those projects were canceled, Zaslav was new and he was using the excuse of I'm new and I'm going to care about quality. Says the man, by the way, that was going to bet it all on The Flash, which including the horrendous decision to continue to try and rehabilitate Ezra Miller, whatever. Well, that ultimately did it cost your studio $200 million, one of the biggest losses of the history of your studio. Meanwhile, he had no faith whatsoever in Barbie and ended up being the biggest hit of the entire history of Warner Brothers. So shows again, what the fuck does he know about quality? So, but continuing on. According to sources, after the Coyote versus Acme news broke last week, several filmmakers instructed representatives to cancel meetings they had on the books with Warner's. But now Coyote may ultimately find a new home. These filmmakers are taking a wait and see approach. Unlike the other films Warner's canceled, Coyote vs. Acme was fully completed and had tested multiple times in the 90s. That's a high score. Best Picture winner Argo, both Deadpool films, and The Conjuring are among features that tested this well. According to sources who have seen the film, which stars Will Forte, John Cena, and Lana Condor, Coyote vs. Acme is a popcorn-style crowd pleaser. Coyote vs. Acme is a great movie, tweeted writer-director Ben David Brzezinski, who worked with Green on Happily. The best of its kind since Who Framed Roger Rabbit. The leads are super likable. It's beautifully shot. The animation is great. The ending makes everyone fucking cry. I thought the goal of this business was to make hit movies. After Batgirl was shelved, a narrative emerged that the film was axed because it wasn't very good. Green's industry friends mobilize to prevent that kind of messaging. Great. From tainting the reputation of Coyote versus Acme. There is still a planned, quote unquote, funeral screening this week on the Warner's lot, according to sources. Though funeral is no longer the apt term for a project that may very well find new life. I don't know how you see the movie and then go, that couldn't happen to me, says Brian Duffield, the filmmaker behind the Hulu sleeper hit No One Will Save You. Duffield was not involved in Coyote versus Acme, but is friends with Green and gave notes on the film. Part of Duffield's frustration, he says, was that Green did everything that was asked of him. He delivered the film, which sources say cost $72 million. That's on budget. That's pretty good. For an animated, I mean, he hit the right test scores. He even moved away from his friends and family to London for 18 months to save the studio money on post-production costs. All this only to see his film get run off a cliff. Duffield believes that Coyote can make money, certainly more than that tax rate. I think Coyote is really similar to Barbie in a lot of ways, says Duffield. They are playing with iconography in a really fun popcorn kind of way. Veteran film executives acknowledge that shelving a film for a tax write-off and to avoid distribution and marketing costs can make an earnings quarter look better, but it can be short-sighted for a studio in the business of building franchises and a slate. Jesus, man. So interestingly, the plot of Coyote versus Acme follows the speechless, ever-determined Wile Coyote as he teams up with a lawyer, Will Forte, to fight the big Acme corporation. Just like in the cartoons, Coyote buys Acme devices to try and kill a Roadrunner, but they never work properly and often abruptly explode. The third shelved Warner's movie, in other words, is the story of an underdog taking on heartless company whose executives don't realize there can be real consequences to making their products blow up in their face.
Oh my god. he probably shoved it because he felt uncomfortable watching it because he's like, there's something about this that just I feel attacked, and he just wanted it to go away. Like that's the only explanation I can think of.
Oh my Oh, Jesus, this is so delicious.
Mhm.
I mean, this is ultimately what ended up being a really horrendous decision turned into a feel-good story, and I'm really hoping that the film um gets picked up because I
Mhm.
want to see it.
I
This
want
sounds
to
like an
see it too.
amazing movie,
Literally
honestly.
any studio that picks it up, like just fight for it. It's gonna make money now because of the
Yeah.
story. Okay,
Yeah.
and it sounds like a great movie too. Like,
And it's just so ridiculous to me how nobody at Warner Brothers, or maybe it was just Zaslav, maybe they just couldn't overrule him, but it's like they saw no value at all.
mhm,
No value at all. Not even putting it on streaming.
mhm,
It's just crazy. And this is a Looney Tune. This is Wile E. Coyote. It's just like just terrible, man.
mhm,
And I don't know if you saw this also, but this story caught the attention of a member of Congress, as a
mhm.
matter of fact. I believe it was earlier today. I believe it was Joaquin Castro. He is a Democratic congressman from Texas. Um, and the headline here was Congressman Joaquin Castro is calling for a federal investigation into Warner Brothers for its handling of This is how big it is.
Yeah.
Coyote versus Acme. He says the tactic of scrapping films for tax breaks is predatory and anti-competitive. It's like burning down a building for the insurance money.
That's literally what it is, though. Like, there's no better comparison. And it really was obvious, honestly, even from Batgirl, that like he just did this to make a quick buck. you know, it's it's just so dumb. He's so
I,
dumb.
I mean, but the thing is, I was just so happy to see this because for these last few years, personally, it would be nice if there was more interest from the government. Well, technically for a lot of things, but particularly here, and also with AI. Like, I'm thinking that with this and with the introduction of AI, they're gonna have to come in here and I don't know, do their fucking jobs and make some freaking laws here because I can only lead to a situation like this where human rights and workers' rights are being violated up the wazoo unless you step in here and actually do the job that you were elected to do and create laws. What a
hmm
novel idea at that, to prevent this disaster from happening, Like, for instance, um, there just in the last week, I read stories of like Zaslav entertaining the idea of like Warner Brothers Discovery acquiring Paramount or selling Warner Brothers to Universal, or even the whole idea of like Apple buying Disney. And it's like, none of these things should be legal.
Yeah.
Like, mergers are one thing, but these these conglomerates basically, like, what a key phrase here that Joaquin Castro used was anti-competitive. In some ways, this is the folly of capitalism. When it becomes unfettered capitalism, when there are no regulations, it stops being real like capitalism,
hmm
and then it starts inching closer and closer to oligarchy. Oligarchy is late stage capitalism. That is not ever been acknowledged as something that works at all.
hmm
It ultimately always ends in ruin. And uh it's just like it's I wish there was more attention being paid to what is going on here because I can only see disaster and ruin if, on the merger standpoint, they're allowed to even do that. I think enough is enough, and there needs to be serious guardrails to prevent that from happening. Because the human cost of any merger is always cataclysmic. Just people, tens of thousands of people just lose their jobs because of a fucking merger, any merger.
hmm
So that's disastrous. But then when it comes to this specifically, and it was funny because when I was reading the line, I was thinking of Robert De Niro's character in Flower Moon, in that scene where they're all meeting outside and then they see that his farm is just like burning down,
Mhm.
and then the insurance guy like mentions that he had sold him insurance just last month.
Mhm.
And again, this is a wonderful comparison. It's like burning down a building for the insurance money.
Mhm.
And just like, yeah, this sounds not just immoral and disgusting. This is now beginning to sound like it was blatantly illegal. And if it's not, it should be.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping, can we get some congressional hearings on this bitch? Can we get David Zaslav to go to Washington and explain what the fuck he did? Because, and by the way, if it gets to that point, that's a fucking disaster.
Oh my
That's a
gosh, yes.
disaster.
I would love to hear what his explanation is. Oh my god, it would be
I mean,
great.
but honestly, if we had a Congress that worked, and I mean that in all sense of the word, by the way, that would be happening right now. So, however, the House of Representatives is currently controlled by Republicans, and Republicans are pro corporate, pro late stage capitalism. They are pro oligarchy, which also, you know, blinds them into being, well, I shouldn't say blinds them, not all of them. Some of them blinds some of them into being authoritarian as well. So, I doubt it, but I mean, I'm sorry, there's a Democratic president. Fucking say shit. I mean, it's funny because, and I think maybe what's more likely of happening was AI, because I know it read like an Onion headline, but it was a few weeks ago that said that President Biden had seen Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, and what was so funny about that headline was that he realized that it scared him, and like, about how bad it could get with AI,
Mhm.
and it's like, it's so cartoonish for a lot of different reasons. Yeah, for one, the president seeing a movie and that's like, I need to do something about that. The whole thing is just so silly and funny. But we've had AI storylines in movies for decades. Are you really telling me that people are only now beginning to sense a threat when it comes to
Mhm.
artificial intelligence? I, you can't make this shit up. You really? It's like, I mean, who the fuck is running the country? Like, I mean, seriously, it's just like, how are things running as smoothly as they possibly could be, even to this extent, when it just, continuously is revealed of how woefully unaware many of our so-called leaders really are about the real issues that are um you know surrounding us all. It's just crazy to me. Um, but I would hope that this, gets more eyeballs on this, on David Zaslav and on Warner Brothers, and it's like, um, it is stunning ultimately that Warner Brothers reversed their tone on this, which I think also speaks to how much backlash they got from, their own inside people. Um, and I'm hoping, can't say I'm sure because, David Zaslav has already revealed himself to be rather craven, but I'm hoping this means they'll at least think twice before they pull this stunt again with something
Mhm.
else. Because I feel, and this is why it was so important to speak on this and that this was reversed, because if this had gone the way these things usually go and no one said shit, uh-oh.
Mhm.
Like, it would be open season yet again on anything else. So, yeah, hell of a story.
Yeah.
What a hell of a story, man. It was just like, that's so crazy to me. Um, reading all that. Anyway, speaking of just really interesting stories, I should say, one of the things that we had failed to mention in last week's show about all the Marvel stuff. Well, you know what? Maybe because it wasn't at that point. confirmed, I don't think, but that Captain America 4 was delayed again. So originally it was supposed to come out in May, but then I believe it was pushed to July. Now it's not coming out next year at all. It's coming out 2025. Um, Months back, we had mentioned leaks of sorts that had come out of the film that were very concerning in that they were going to revolve around a whole bunch of characters that seemingly have no business being a part of a Captain America movie, like all of the Hulks for one. Um, so it's not it never was surprising that there were problems, but evidently they were even worse than what we could have possibly have imagined, because apparently um certain sources are saying that it was Daredevil Born Again Part 2 again for Kevin Feige, in that he had time to he he had time to see it, to see what was there, and apparently this is the sad part. Unlike Daredevil, this was done. This was shot, it was ready to go. He sat down and saw it, and apparently it was an unmitigated disaster. So here they have a film that's done, but here we are, and they're gonna go and shoot it again completely.
Yeah. I think it was Peter that said, you can tell the quality of a movie just by reading the script. So, like, stop shooting the movie and writing it at the same time. It's not gonna work, and it hasn't been working. So sit down and read.
No, sit down and write, and then read it, and to make sure that this is what you want to do. But it's just like, it would be one thing if this was in isolation, but it's like, dude, when is enough enough?
Yeah.
Because like, isn't this like the 5th or 6th time this has happened? Because I mean, and then all of the recent like time span itself, like this just happened with Daredevil, where they had to literally shut down and start from scratch. This just happened with Secret Invasion, where it took 2.5 years to get that thing to go on Disney Plus, because they shot it for half a year. Turns out didn't like it, fired all the writers and directors, and then shot it over again. And then when they were shooting it again, they were having major problems with the people working on it personality wise. Then you saw it, David, and you called it the worst thing they've ever done.
Yeah.
And then I mean, it's really beginning to dramatically affect the quality of their stuff. Like the Marvels, we're gonna talk about this film in a minute in much more depth and detail. But when you watch the Marvels, packed to death. Like you can just so much was either taken out or rearranged or maybe even written on the fly.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they would really save themselves a lot of heartache if they just would wait to, I don't know, have a finalized script before they shoot.
Especially when you're teasing something that we're not gonna see it for a long time. We're not gonna see it at all.
Right? If you see it at all.
Yeah.
At this point.
It's like I don't understand. Like, when they first announced Phase 3, you had the timeline right there, and everything looked fine. Maybe you had the scripts ready on those. I don't know how you did it before, but like keep doing it. And he did like read the scripts before filming. We know that for sure, because like I said, the writers for Infinity War and Captain America, they said that they wrote it down, they showed it to him, he read it and went, great, add this character, and then they sat down and wrote it again. They weren't filming. So like I don't understand why you changed it up and how you thought that would have worked.
Like, for example, the Marvels, I think somebody pointed this out. I forget which one who said it, but in one of the reviews that I saw, but the Marvels feels like one of the films one of the first films that Marvel has made where they announced it, but they had no idea what they wanted this to be.
Mm-hmm.
And when you watch the film, I think you see it try to be a couple of things,
Mm-hmm.
but never really succeeding at being any one of them. Um, and to me, it just reeks of a process that is standard Marvel, where the poor director was just there to hold the camera.
Really.
She was not allowed to really infuse any of herself with the story, which that in and of itself, I mean, the story basically wasn't allowed to come to fruition until at least half of the material had already been shot.
Mm-hmm.
I, I mean, again, Tom Holland was speaking how in No Way Home, the script was being rewritten the morning of the shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, you need to stop this.
Yeah.
You can't seriously expect your situation to improve
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to continue doing this the whole time through.
Mm-hmm. And mind
And
you,
yeah,
we want to see these movies.
we want
Like,
to see them succeed. We want to see them be good.
yeah, yeah,
That's the
but like
important
either way
part.
though, like we don't care if you wait a year or two. We want to see these movies.
Right.
So like, take your time.
Yes.
And not just with the MCU, but with really any studio. It makes no sense that you make a movie and it's such shit quality, and I don't mean just like writing wise, but like CGI wise and everything, and you don't think like, hey, I want to own these movies. Like I want to keep them. I want to keep watching them. Like I keep going to the classic nights at my theater every Tuesdays. They show a classic movie. I think today was The Wedding Singer.
Oh,
I think the week before or maybe 2 weeks before it was Wolf of Wall Street, and that's not classic, but like it's still like that's what I really wanted to watch. And so you
great fucking movie.
yeah,
Wolf of Wall Street.
I know it's so great. And so can you really feel confident that any of these movies from Phase 4/5 anyone's gonna want to rewatch them? No. So you're fucked. People went and sat down for who knows how many hours and rewatched the entire MCU movies. Remember before Endgame came out, they had like a theater showing. A bunch of people went there. No one's gonna do that with these. Like, so why would you half-ass all these things? Mm-hmm.
It's like, again, among the many problems is you're forgetting that there's really no value in teasing anything about what is going to come next
Yeah.
when everything you do is consistently failing at being good in a variety of different ways, but a lot of them in almost the exact same ways. So that means that next year in 2024, the only movie coming out of the MCU is Deadpool 3. That I know of, the only thing coming out on the TV side of things is Echo, which is going to be a really stunning shift. And I also have to say, it's not like it's done intentionally. I think it happened almost entirely because they fucked up too many times
Mm-hmm.
and with too many shows, which is why I want to say Daredevil was going to come out next year. Captain America was going to come out next year. There was a point where there would have been Ironheart and Agatha, and none of that's happening now because it's gotten to the point where on every single project, there's just ruin and destruction happening everywhere you look.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, yeah, less is better, but let's not pretend like it was by choice. And only time will tell if they're willing to change uh how they do things. But again, at the moment I've seen no evidence to suggest that they feel like that's the problem. I think things have become so apparent that they know that there is a problem, but I don't know if I have any kind of faith that they can detect what in actuality the problem really is for them and what's holding them back. Um I think what's it called here? So I mean, transitioning to the Marvels movie, and just gonna warn people, it may take maybe a couple of minutes, give or take 20, before we actually start talking about the movie itself, because there's so much to say here.
Mhm.
Before even getting into it. Now, I don't want to spend too much time relitigating because we actually spent a big part of our discussion last week on last week's episode talking about a lot of things regarding this movie, and I would, just direct you guys to go listen to that first before you watch this one. Um, so bigger than the Marvels itself, it feels like, considering how the film performed, I feel like we're at an inflection point now in a much more clearer way than we were back in February. Back in
Mhm.
February, Quantumania came out, and I think Quantumania was like the first real um blow that Marvel has had. For one, I honestly didn't think they thought they had a really big hit on their hands at that time.
Mhm.
Now in retrospect, with what I've read, it explains why I saw that fucking trailer so many times and that they were caught off guard. But Quantumania was a huge disappointment. Uh and the Marvels, at the very least, is that, and it could be much bigger than that with it being a flop as well. It's a real possibility. This is one of the first ever Marvel films that doesn't make back its money. Wow. I mean, that's the level in which we were in.
Mhm.
Um, the film had the lowest domestic and worldwide opening weekend of any Marvel movie ever. Here on the domestic side, it opened to $47 million, the lowest for any MCU film, any of them. It was even lower than the lows of well, technically speaking, I think it's still opened higher than Shazam: Fury of the Gods, but it did come in lower than The Flash earlier this year, which, right, if you don't recall, The Flash itself was a huge disaster, only opening to 55 million opening weekend. Um, Even worse for the film, uh, initially, I don't really mention Rotten Tomatoes too much because I don't really like it. But it was not great. Um, but the metric that's most important, I would say, is how audiences enjoyed it. And I want to remind people that it's, um, I believe it's called Cinema Score, and this is at select theaters. They're basically polled about what grade they would give the movie as they walk out. This is the most reliable. This is the gold standard, really, to see if, like, how general audiences feel about certain films. And lately, a lot of the Phase 4 and Phase 5 MCU stuff has been in the B plus range, which is not great. It might sound great, but it depends on the genre of movies. For instance, if a horror film gets a C, that's considered great. But if a comic book film gets anything lower than a B plus, that's terrible.
Mhm.
And so the Marvels received a B cinema score, making it one of the lowest ever MCU rated films on Cinema Score. Um, Not for nothing, I did read a headline that suggests that the Marvels is the highest opening movie for a woman of color.
Mm.
Well, let me redirect that. Let me actually, that's not true. Forget I said that. Um, I Because, man, these headlines are terrible. Um, So basically, this is a freaking disaster on all fronts.
Mhm.
Marvel was worried about this going into it from sources, and it turns out that they were right to be worried. But I can't say they have any right in being surprised.
Mhm.
It shows that they were caught by surprise, that this failed so spectacularly. Um, I mean, to me, all of these numbers, especially that box office total, just represents what the MCU has become. Like to me, when I call it an inflection point, it's not like this is the beginning of a new way that Marvel is going to be treated as by the, the pop culture lexicon. No, I just think this kind of cements where Marvel has been, where it is, and where it might be going to even lower depths. Like, you can't really spin this as anything else but the moment where the MCU just maybe not completely, but definitely has lost its stranglehold over audiences. Um, and you might be thinking to yourself, why this movie? Well, there are a lot of people who are looking for those answers, and unfortunately, a lot of people are being swayed by the wrong voices and thinking they're providing answers. Um, a lot of people in this Marvel fandom, honestly, I'm just gonna say it, they're not very smart, and they very clearly can't really detect the very um, real issues that have always existed in the MCU. So it creates blinders for them where they're just not they can't really read films, and so they're really just floundering to see they can feel something's different. They can feel it's not hitting, but they can't quite put it to words what the problem is here, even though it's pretty obvious for the rest of us what the problem is. It's the filmmaking quality itself is the reason for why everything else is falling apart. But they, heaven forbid that they blame Kevin Feige
Mhm.
is basically what it is. And so because of that, they're being swayed by voices on the internet that is putting the idea in their heads that the reason for why this is happening now, not just the reason why the MCU is like not doing as great, but then also for why it's this movie and not any other one, was because this is a film that was catered um, for a female audience,
Mhm.
and therefore, um, for some of those people, it means that it was exclusively made for a female audience, and it somehow means that men are not invited or are not invited to the party.
Mhm.
Um, I feel it is very dangerous to I'm speaking here not to the morons or not to the assholes, but I'm speaking more to the people who genuinely I think are coming from a good place. It is very dangerous to repeat that talk and repeat these ideas where other people who don't know any better might become convinced that's actually the problem here, because it's not.
Mhm.
The idea that somehow the problem is that Marvel is now making stories that are not centered around white leads is so intellectually insulting. I don't even know what to say. Like, for instance, if that was the case, why, therefore, is when they broke down the demographics of the Marvels, why were most of the people that went to go out and see this were guys?
Mhm.
Doesn't that just in and of itself destroy your own argument?
Mhm.
Also, doesn't the first Captain Marvel, in how many people went to go see it,
Mhm.
also help to destroy your own argument that projects that are led by, minorities of any kind don't have any kind of like interest by the main audiences. That's not true.
Yeah.
That's not true at all. It's bogus. And I want to also quote here Zoe Rose Bryant, um, who spoke to this because I mean Chris Gore, who to me he's always been kind of an idiot in a way. I don't really pay attention to him all that often, but he tweeted over the weekend, turning Marvel and Star Wars into girl brands will prove to be one of the costliest decisions in entertainment history. What the fuck are you talking
Yeah.
about? What are you talking about?
Yeah. And then you put that tweet of I don't know if,
Well, I was gonna quote that one, but go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
you
You
know,
want
you
to read
go
it?
ahead.
Okay.
You read it.
So she said, Zoe retweeted this saying, seven, seven of the 10 Marvel movies released in the 20. There's been 7 Marvel movies in the
Mm-hmm.
20. What the fuck?
I've been looking at the list.
Damn. 7 of the 10 Marvel movies released in the 2020s featured male leads. That's 70%.
Mm-hmm.
7 of the 9 Marvel shows released in the there've been 9 shows. There've been 9 shows and 7 movies? No. There've been 10 movies and 9 shows.
I can't
Uh,
even name half of them. Oh my gosh.
I,
Like for the shows, I know it's WandaVision, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, Loki, Secret Invasion. What else was there?
Falcon and Winter Soldier,
Falcon and Winter Soldier.
She-Hulk,
Okay.
What If, I guess.
Oh, okay. I don't. I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, I bet. I mean, yeah.
But then what's the last one? Fuck, I can't.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But she continues. 7 of the 9 Marvel TV shows released in the 2020s featured male leads. So that's 4 of the 5 Star Wars shows released in the 2020s featured male leads. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is what I mean. But I mean, I think that this tweet single-handedly dismantles that argument
Yeah.
of like, oh, the reason why Marvel and Star Wars are failing now is because they're this stupid idea that they've turned their brands into exclusively for women.
Mm-hmm.
7 of the 10 movies male leads.
Yeah.
And what was it? 7 of the 9 shows male leads. What the fuck? What do you say to that?
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like saying TKO. That's it. Like,
Yeah.
what do you say? Like,
And
that's
also, they want to say that this one, I literally saw a video. Someone said Eternals and the Marvels were some of the worst MCU movies they made. And I was really like, and he only cheered for that because both Marvels and Eternals were directed by women. That's literally why he was so excited that they were the worst movies. That's the only reason why he said it was the worst movies. Mind
and I
you,
believe those were 2 of only 3 Marvel movies that were directed by women in the last few years. Zoe also tweeted, "It's honestly hilarious to see so many people attributing the Marvel's underperformance to Go Woke, Go Broke when the highest grossing film of the year is Barbie."
Yeah. And that one was for sure catered for women. And I've seen a couple of videos where some of the women didn't really like the Barbie, but like all the men were like, "This was so much fun," mind you. And it's like, it just makes no sense. The whole go woke, go broke thing. It never does.
No, it really doesn't, does it? I just feel like, by the way, can I just comment on something that just I haven't been able to stop thinking about? Remember a few days ago, I sent out this tweet. I shared with you this tweet thread of people who were some variety of Marvel stans and wanted this movie to do well. That they created fake accounts to drum up sympathy for the stars of the movie as a means to somehow translate that into box office receipts. And what I mean by that is how some people created accounts that were saying that Iman Vellani had lost her home in Palestine, which is so unbelievably racist and offensive. She doesn't even live in Palestine.
Yeah.
She's not even. But they did that because they wanted to help the movie succeed in a way.
Hmm.
And you just gotta like, what kind of mind thinks like that?
Yeah. That's.
Like there is a horrible tragedy happening right now in the Middle East, and this is what you use that for.
But go watch this movie though. Like really.
I mean, like, how fucking I mean, how sad is it that this is what they go to? Um, I just that honestly blew my mind.
Hmm.
And you know something else that we should mention that I'm looking at a lot of the stuff that we have shared with lately. Uh, this has also turned into a different kind of inflection point with the film critic community, because I shared some clips of people who are involved in that circle who are beginning to kind of like turn their fire on
Hmm.
each other because um the Marvels had some initial social media reactions, and go figure, the same people who say positive things about every single Marvel movie continue to say positive things about this movie. And I think what was different a little bit in tone this time, David, was that it's never been clearer before about how much they admitted in the tweets themselves that the story and the script weren't very good.
Hmm.
But to me, if you have a bad script, you've got a bad movie,
Hmm.
almost in every circumstance. Like this one, for instance, Scott Mantz. What the Marvels lacks in telling a strong, structured, coherent story. I mean, where do you go from there?
I
What
know.
the Marvel lacks in telling a strong, structured, and coherent story, it makes up for with a charming cast. And then he ends it by saying, "It didn't overstay its welcome." What kind of positivity is
I
this?
know, and like
Wait,
I understand the struggle of like explaining this movie because even I was like kind of like I really had fun with this movie,
sure.
but it's not good. It's like it's just like how do I explain this to people? I don't know that, but just
Also, to add on to it, Scott Mendelson, The Marvels is an enjoyable, often hilarious 3-star romp. And then he continues, its screenplay is downright terrible in terms of plot and structure. Its screenplay is downright terrible in terms of plot and structure, but the character chemistry makes it work. Uh, I believe Peter was the one that said in the chat that no amount of you know goodwill from the cast can make up for a bad script. Um, like at all. I
Mhm.
believe it was, what did he say here? Oh, the actors of these films, this is what Peter says. The actors of these films can only carry the film so far. A trash script and awful visuals are going to bring it down too much, especially if if both are getting worse with time. But the shills, I mean, and this is hilarious how we're just using the word shills now, but it's beginning to feel that way.
Mhm.
But the shills will watch the movie and go, I like Imani, so it was a good time, which means good movie, which is what a lot of these reactions felt like if you read them.
Mhm.
And the thing is this, if you read some of those reactions, what was funny was that was half of the people, and they can be qualified into Funko critics, which they always will give the movies positive reviews. But then other people were like, they have had enough, and I'm going to play for you, I should say, a series of reactions. This comes from Christy Lemire walking out of the theater.
Worst MCU movie yet. It pains me to say this. It brings me no joy to report this to you. I really wanted to like this, and I like the idea of a female-centric Marvel film with a woman at the helm as director, and it's awful, you guys. It looks like crap. The writing is so not funny and so stiff, and it's so just like people sitting around explaining things to each other, and the totally incomprehensible action sequences.
Okay, then Christian Harloff.
It starts off so chaotic at one point, but then it starts to kind of fit into this mold of like, oh, okay, this is what it wants to do. It's forming this team between, and now we understand kind of where this is going. And then something happens, is what I'm going to say. No spoiler.
So you can hear the frustration in their voices about like, what the hell? So that was happening the same night that these reactions were dropping. And you just knew like, okay, well, that's just about as usual as this thing can go. The New York Post called the film abject misery, which is funny. I didn't think it was misery. We'll get into it right now because I have to say I actually had a good time watching the movie. But the thing is, there's like how you said, it's not good at all, and there's a lot of things wrong. Like almost everything is wrong with the movie. That's the problem.
There's a lot of like tiny things that I'm just like, oh, why would you make this? Why would you do this?
And it brings it down a lot. It brings down the quality like detrimentally. But it's like, I guess I could say that objectively, you could say that there are better MCU films, but I'm just like either bored at or uninterested at, for a lot of reasons. Or I would say I was like, to me, a film that the closest I think that the MCU has come to complete abject misery was Quantumania.
Yeah.
That was a film that, I mean, Jesus, right? And then, Dan Merle, did you see his review? Like he came down hard on this movie in ways that I hadn't, like I've rarely ever heard him do. So because of that, I just got to play this.
Yeah. Any pleasure to say that I think that the Marvels is an unmitigated disaster for Marvel and the MCU at this point in time. I think it is the culmination of every single mistake that the MCU has made over the last 15 years. And quite frankly, it surprises me that this movie was deemed fit for release in the shape that it's in. The Marvels is little more than a series of action sequences strung together by random scenes that sometimes connect and sometimes don't. It's obvious that this movie was chopped up, reshot, rewritten, and some attempt was made to assemble something out of it, but it is a failed attempt. If I were Kevin Feige and I saw the cut of this movie that's going out to theaters this weekend, I would have deemed it unreleasable in its current form. I think it feels that unfinished. And yet the Marvels is hitting theaters this weekend to what I think will be these characters and the franchise's detriment.
He called this movie kind of like the culmination of every single mistake they've made. And I think in some ways, that's exactly what happened here. And I don't want to get into the movie just yet. Because I want to say that there was something else that I saw here. Yes, I don't want to get off of the critics part just yet, because I think what was one of the more interesting exchanges was on Christian Harloff's show, The Big Thing, where he had one of his friends come in here and kind of like, in a lot of ways, dropped a lot of truth bombs.
Reviews are now becoming AI. It spits it out. It is like, the plot's messy, the script's messy, the bad guy's forgettable, X-actor steals the show, post-credits, OMG, best ever, stay for it. Without a doubt, someone's review or reaction will have those 3 or 4 things in there in that order. Sure. Every damn time. Every time. Well, I would love people to go, holy shit, that villain sucks, but I enjoyed Kamala Khan. That's what I said. I would love to see that honesty. That's what I just said. But it's not. Because everyone wants their quote tweet. They want to be the one that gets put up on the review so they can take a picture next to it like, my name and I said this about it. I did say, I'm so glad I'm not in that thing. What I will say is that I saw a lot of people, like, because the thing, I've said this many times, and I don't think it's fair where it comes to, it's hard for people get scared to be honest about these things.
people get scared to be honest about these things.
Learn to go to certain people in our circle because we talk a lot. And when I see the review, and then I'll talk to that person in private, and they'll say, "Oh, this movie's terrible." I was like, "But your review didn't say that. Right. Why? Why are you not being honest? Like, where? I think that to me is realized for me why I've stepped back from the discourse of I don't even talk about DC films online after I see them because because it's just awful.
It is what the thing moves. The location swap is a blast, and the end credits is. And I'm definitely a fan. Okay, I love Eric. I disagree with him.
You know this guy, and he's one of the ones that every time an MCU film comes out, I know what it's going to say. Yeah, I know it's going to say. I don't have the time to go back and look through 10 years of MCU first reactions, but I'm sure someone online will do it and post
his stuff.
So you see that, like, how do you talk to him, knowing a friend of yours, and go, "Dude, what were you thinking? Because do we see the same movie?"
I wouldn't say it like
that. So you're beginning to see not just the idea of what's it called, the MCU not being received as well, but you're beginning to see a bit of a divide now in how the people in that space who cover these movies and how you're beginning to see in real time them having conversations about how they should continue to cover this or not. And it kind of reveals that what Peter has been saying the whole time, which was that these films were always graded on a curve, and now that's no longer the case. Yeah. And that's why you're seeing reactions like these that are, just frustrated, they're angry, and they're disappointed. So it's really hilarious because I guess to me, what makes it a little bit funnier is I don't think this is, well, let me, I think in a way it is the worst MCU movie. I don't think it is the worst, but that's because I happen to think that I think there's some pretty good competition, actually, as a matter of fact, for what could be the worst, Mm-hmm. And to me, I do hesitate in calling this movie the worst because now this may make me seem like one of those shills on those reactions, but like, I didn't have a miserable time watching it. Whereas I did have a miserable time watching Quantumania and Ant-Man and the Wasp and Black Widow. Right? That's a movie. I mean, it's like so many of these things where they come out and I'm like, wow, that was just bad. And why would I ever watch this again? It's like, to me, that's what I would consider worse. Whereas with the Marvels, I want to say that the overall attitude was there's really no shortage of things that I can say where I noticed an issue. There were so many noticeable issues. And I do think you can call it the worst movie from the perspective of if you watch this on some level, it occurs to you, like it occurred to me, that Kevin Feige and his team threw their hands up and just gave up and just threw it out there. It really does feel like there was no version of this where they ever would have been happy because of how they make movies. Mm-hmm. They got themselves in that place and they kept recutting it and nobody was happy with it. So they were just like, fuck it. We'll just put it out there and that's it. Mm-hmm. And that's what it feels like. And so from that standpoint, I think it is the worst because it's like, it really does feel, and then there were in some instances, which I'll say they weren't entirely devoid of being humorous. They were, and I mean these sequences, but it also felt on some level that this film delved into parody or like an SNL version of Marvel on in some ways. But it also was weird because there was an emotional core happening with the characters, and there were also the parents of Kamala Khan. So it's like it's a weird imbalance here. But on the whole, I gotta say, I was entertained.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's just the truth of it. But
Hmm.
there's a distinction to be made because and I want to be clear. Um, a lot of those people in those tweets, um, seemingly they felt like they were giving the movie a pass because they had a good time and
Hmm.
of the dynamic of the stars. But I want to be clear. Both David and I are of the mind that just because we had a good time and we happen to, I guess we'll agree that we had a good time with the leads, it doesn't at all excuse all of the bad things that were in this film. I mean, sometimes I will say in most instances, if films can do more good than bad, then I can, I can live with the bad. I can like overlook it. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, but look at what else is working over here.
Yeah.
Here, it's not one of those situations. Like honestly, the good here is very few and far in between, and there are a lot of problems from story structure. There are a lot of problems with characterization. There are a lot of problems with execution, with the filming, with the absolute lack of like visual direction about what they wanted this to be. And that's not even getting into the overall problems that enter the scene when you compare this to the usual Marvel fare. Uh, so to me, honestly, this is gonna be a weird movie to talk about because
Yeah.
there were moments where I kind of liked it and I had a good time. Like I was, and you know what? And to be fair, part of it did come from me laughing at the movie, but I still had a good time. I was still entertained.
Hmm.
But that being said, also that doesn't mean that I'm like gonna champion this movie at all. This was like to me, I equate this to like a harmless throwaway straight to streaming movie that you watch on like a late Saturday night. You say you had a good time with it, but it absolutely at all didn't register with you and will leave no impact on you.
Hmm.
So that's the realm in which we're dealing with. But it's also important to say because of how low expectations were, we're not in dog shit territory. Not really.
Hmm.
However, there were too many decisions in this movie, I feel, that verged on it only because of how tone deaf they felt and how horribly they were executed. So again, it's just it's gonna be a weird movie to talk about. So let me go and get out the letterbox description here. This was directed by Kevin Feige's team. Higher, further, faster together, which they never made that work. I don't know. Okay. Carol Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, has reclaimed. This is a long. Like, does it really need to be this long?
No.
Okay. Carol Danvers. Okay, it's Carol Danvers. It's Kamala Khan and it's Monica Rambeau. They all have light powers, and somehow that means they have to be in the same movie together, and they end up switching places, and shenanigans ensue, and it's a Marvel movie. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
I'm not reading this. I am not reading this.
Yeah.
But one thing I will say here, and it's going to be a complete sideshow from like what we were just discussing, but it says here that um there's a new organization in this world called Saber. Where'd that come from?
Wait,
This new satellite that's on above Earth. How long has that been there?
that's Saber, not Sword.
Yeah. No, here they're calling it Saber, and in the movie they say Saber. They don't say Sword. Sword's done. So
What the
Sword got replaced by Saber.
What the heck? Saber is. I think she's a villain, actually. Saber is like this big company that deals with like security stuff. Let me see.
I'm sorry. I thought Saber was this
Sable. Never mind. Sorry.
not Sable. What is that name? Ring a bell. Saber, isn't it this intergalactic like hub? Like police agency? Like isn't it
Um.
just like Shield but with like all of space? Like basically what the Guardians of the Galaxy are in nowhere.
Mhm.
Isn't that what Saber is?
Oh, I think so. I can't remember.
You know what? We have the internet. Let's look
Yeah.
this up. Even though, like, okay, who cares anymore? But you know what? This is the thing about Marvel movies. Even when I don't care, they get me to think, to be curious about what's this? What does this mean? Um, Saber, Marvel. Okay, Saber means strategic aerobase biophysics and exon linguistic response, or Saber, is a defense system spearheaded by Nick Fury. Okay.
Okay, as far as I'm seeing, it says that doesn't exist in the comics.
Oh, it does not? I
No.
thought it did. Okay. That's interesting. Oh, so I guess it's basically sword, but they're not calling it sword anymore.
Weird.
At least to the worries. There's so much to say and so many directions to go. Where do you start? This is a big negative. Let's say and let's assume you saw Captain Marvel. I want to say everybody did. It made $1 billion, so I think everybody saw Captain Marvel. As we feared and as we suspected, this film made absolutely no attempt whatsoever to address the characterization issues that everybody had with Carol Danvers. Carol Danvers is a hard character to describe because how can you describe who she is? We're now 2 movies in, 2 full movies where she's in, and what can I really say? Like, she's a superhero. She's mostly serious. I guess she stands up for what's right, but she's just like
There.
generic superhero when she's there, and there's no personality there. And it's like, that's not the failing of Brie Larson. She's an amazing Academy Award-winning actress. That is the failing of all of the people who were employed to write this character at Marvel Studios. I don't understand how you do this. I don't understand. To me, if you go back to 2019's Captain Marvel, I feel anyway, more so than Doctor Strange, more so than Ant-Man and the Wasp, this to me was the real eye-opening moment where I'm like, uh-oh, what happened here? Like, and you have to understand that at that point, all of us were in love with the MCU. But even from that movie, we realized there was a problem here that wasn't quite clicking. And honestly, it's incredible how they dropped the ball so hard then. And here we are all these years later. They knew they had those problems. They got years and years worth of feedback. And they made no attempt, absolutely no attempt whatsoever, to address this with the lead character of this supposed franchise, Captain Marvel. Which, by the way, would be one thing if it, but apparently she's supposed to be, well, whenever that ever happens again, apparently what makes it even more frustrating is that in other projects, like in Far From Home or in Miss Marvel or in WandaVision, apparently the people in the MCU know who she is and know her more than we do, apparently, which is kind of annoying.
That's just one of the nitpicks right there that I have. Like, they never explain why Miss Marvel is such a big fan of Captain Marvel, which I feel like you could have like a great moment between the two of them when if she explains that or something. Like,
this movie would be the opportunity to do that, and that never at all happens, right?
Honestly, I think the movie just should have been Miss Marvel and Captain Marvel.
Honestly. Yes.
Like, you honestly could have ended this movie with Miss Marvel convincing her to go back, and she's like, "Hey," and then you just get a moment between the two of them with Carol and Monica at the end finally meeting after who knows how long, and all that. And then, like, we don't have to know their conversation. We can like learn about that in a later time, where Captain Marvel 3 or something. I don't know. Yeah, it's weird that like we're saying that like Captain Marvel wasn't as well developed in this movie, but like I feel like Monica was like kind of the one dragging this movie a bit. I don't know, especially honestly though, because especially because of her scenes, I fucking hated that moment where they were fixing the ship and she just like straight up goes, "Why didn't you come back?" And I'm like, wait a minute, can't we could not have transitioned to this better? Just you just throw it out there.
Well, at that point, I feel like that was my cue to really stop taking the movie seriously. I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't really take it seriously to begin with, but like, that was just one in many moments where crucial, pivotal moments happen, but they happen from scene to scene with seemingly no transition,
Yeah.
and they're so awkwardly positioned and placed within um the pacing of the film.
Mm-hmm.
So it does a lot of things.
Yeah.
It ruins all tension. It destroys the pacing. It makes you feel strange and weird because of where they're placed. It doesn't at all service the story or the characters when all anybody can think about is not the dramatization of what happened in those scenes, but of how awkwardly placed they were and how also even more awkwardly executed they were. Like it didn't work on any level.
Mm-hmm.
None of it was convincing at all.
I was trying to say those exact things in the group chat, but like, I couldn't do it. I'm like, this isn't not gonna make any sense to you guys. How do I explain why it's bad? And all I could put was just this movie was rushed. Like that's all I could
But
say.
I mean that's the cleanest way of saying
Yeah.
that it was rushed, because that's the thing. It's like the film, you can say, makes the attempt to say all these things, you know, but I'm thinking I'm sure there are other movies where this happened as well, but you have to wonder, like, is it the result of, you know, so many scenes, because it's a short movie, but it
Mhm.
wasn't designed to be a short film. A lot of it was cut out. You have to wonder, like, because of all the stuff that is cut out, mixed with honestly a lot of random things that just happen in the movie for seemingly no reason.
Mhm.
When you put all those things together, it just makes it feel like a movie that had so much like sucked out from it, and we're watching like a rough assembly of it. Like when Dan Merle said that this film feels like it wasn't ready for release, like we were watching a rough cut. That's what it feels like, because so much happens at every point of the movie, and very little of it is really addressed, or set up or resolved. Um take it whichever way you want. Like literally all those things happen seemingly simultaneously. So um it's like, and there's also not many people, I guess this isn't that big of a deal considering um that it is Marvel, but like, you know, this is easily the silliest Marvel movie.
Mhm. But that's why
Like
I like.
but that's no, I'm not saying it's bad,
Yeah.
but like um very easily the silliest one of them all,
Mm.
where there are moments where it's not taking itself seriously at all, and it feels more like a spoof, but they're committing to the spoof and it makes it feel like great. But those are the moments where I think it's actually kind of good. But then you cut to a colony, and people are dying. And then you cut to oceans being taken from one planet to the other, or a sun dying, and this really dramatic scene with Dar-Ben, the villain, and it's like, to me, I've always been mystified when people say that guns movies are tonally imbalanced. I think this one was one of the most tonally imbalanced, because, and I think it also, I mean, I don't care about tonal imbalance, but it really stood out here. But I think it also made the film worse, because if it had just committed 100% to being silly, I think it would have been the better off for it.
Yeah.
But it tried to, there were scenes where there was a long musical sequence, or there was a really comedic Florkin scene in the same space where the villain is just like decimating people left and right, and her feeling like she's in a completely different movie than what's going on here. Also, I gotta say, like, this is what makes it just such a weird experience, because all the scenes with Dar-Ben were like,
Yeah, I know.
all the scenes with the Marvels themselves were either looking at the time or like, okay. Or even with the musical scene, I will say I was smiling with the musical scene. I was like,
Same.
okay, I'm here for this. Let's do this. So that's what makes it so weird, because those are very different emotions with just those characters. But then when you go to all the stuff going on with Nick Fury and the parents, that ranges too, because it's mostly comedic and it mostly works. But then every time you have a moment with, like, especially Kamala's mom with Kamala, I'm like getting emotional. And it's like, what is happening here? Like, I'm just like, there's so many emotions that I'm feeling right now. And it's just like, this isn't by design. It's just a fluke that some of it happens to work. And I think that's the result of them just like giving up and just saying, fuck it, just theaters, because we're done with it. Your take on what I'm saying, is this making sense what I'm saying?
I 100% understand what you're saying. Like, let me get to some of the nitpicks that I was talking about.
Please.
So, like, and basically with each character, Nick Fury, first of all, Samuel L. Jackson, he's a great actor. He can deliver any line. But the jokes that he makes, it just doesn't seem like Nick Fury. Like, he's really not his character. The first time that I was just like, why would you do this, was when he was in the elevator thing and Carol shows up, like, just teleported there. And she's trying to explain, like, oh, there was a glowy thingy and there was this purple glow in one of the teleport thingies and all that. And I touched it. And he's like, why would you touch it? And all that. Like, that's a good line. But then she's explaining, like, what happens. And she goes, and then this happens. She goes like this. And then, she's basically just sticking out her hand. And then Nick Fury goes, scissors beats paper. Like, and like in that moment, I'm like, and I laughed, like he delivered it well. I found it funny. But I'm also like, that's not, Nick Fury does not make that joke. But he does not do that at all. And so it's just these little nitpicks that I see all the time. And so, you mentioned with Carol.
Well, real quick with Nick Fury, I laughed at that too, but because it wasn't funny. I laughed at it because it was just so awkward. Like, to me, almost every other line with Nick Fury kind of didn't work. And it became, like, honestly, like, I think it's fair to say that the Marvel team was desperate, because literally every line that came out of Nick Fury's mouth was a joke. Like, I felt like it's like, this is why I'm saying that this feels like more than any other Marvel movie, like it was a spoof version of itself, because he is acting like a spoof version of Nick Fury. Like, he's not taking any of this seriously at all. He's just chilling. Like, he's just kind of there. He's entertaining the parents. He honestly doesn't even seem to care about, he's not really involved emotionally in any of what's going on. And then I think for you, it should be even worse, because you just saw Secret Invasion. That's not the same character, right?
It's not the same character. He was so serious in this one too. Like, I can't remember a single joke he might have said in this. I mean, there are some funny deliveries and all, but he really was not funny in this. And in this one though too, when the whole station was going down, basically, it didn't feel like he was taking charge. Like, he didn't care. Dude, this scene compared to Avengers, when the helicarrier was going down, he was like fucking. He wouldn't take shit. He saw someone, like, when he found out that they were gonna blow up New York and shit, he fucking got out, got a fucking what's it called, I don't know, bazooka or some shit, and like just fired at someone. Like, he's so fucking badass. He takes the leadership role seriously, and in this one he's just kind of like, we'll see what happens. And
like, no, there were scenes that cut to him on Saber. His crew found some really suspicious looking things. Like, I'm thinking like Alien in my head, like, get it the fuck away from me.
Yeah.
And he's just like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then we cut away. What? Like, I mean, what the fuck?
This was just not Nick Fury. This was just Samuel L. Jackson fucking goofing around and all that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, that's what it felt like. Like,
Yeah.
And it really shows that no one, like, I don't know what happened. Like, was he directed like this? But then again, was there any direction? It looks like. I mean, that's. Yeah. So everything about Nick Fury, I agree with you, man. Like, I was like, and I think it makes it even worse that Secret Invasion came out before this, because look, we should also mention that Secret Invasion played a big part in the in this movie not doing so well, because it was so bad that I honestly feel it permanently drew people away from, the MCU. But it also is hilarious because, as we kind of were expecting, after I walked out of Captain Marvel, I mean this Marvel's movie, I texted you and I'm like, because I know of events that happened in Secret. I didn't watch it, but I know of the events that happened, and I'm like, David, like, does it feel like the Secret Invasion TV show was like it took place in an alternate reality or in the multiverse? Because nothing of what happened in that show felt like it existed in the same universe as the Marvels. Like, if anything, it kind of contradicted big things that happened on Secret Invasion.
Literally, Secret Invasion is pointless. Like, and honestly, do that. Just erase it. Bring Talos back. And
because like the whole thing of Secret Invasion was that they could never find a home for the Skrulls, but in this movie
they have a home.
We see some Skrulls. They have their own world. They're fine.
Not only that, but when they lose their home, Carol's like, I know someone who can help you, and they go to New Asgard, and it's like, oh my god, you did that like that, okay? And the show tells us that in fucking 40 years or something, they couldn't find a planet for them, a place for them. Like, it just completely erases it. There's no point for it. And also, the funniest joke actually for Samuel Jackson, it was when they were flying off the base, and Kamala's brother starts praying, and the Fury's like, "Are you praying? Well, don't stop, keep going. Amen." Just.
We're gonna need it. Like, that was funny.
That was hilarious, and that didn't seem out of character. That was they just going, "Amen, amen." That was great. Okay, sorry, off tangent. But
no, but I mean, it's that's like, all of what we just said. I think like we just like we're criticizing it, but then also like, oh, we just remembered a moment that worked really well, and it's like, this is such a weird movie.
It is.
This is because there are moments that work, and then there are moments that don't at all.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. That movie, that moment was like, that was really good.
Yeah, and I mean, for the other characters, like I mentioned, Monica, she just can. I don't know. I did not really care that she was mad at Carol, that she was gone for this long. Like, it's understandable that she's mad about it, but at the same time, why should I care?
I agree with you that it was poorly handled. But also, it just, the whole situation, her having an issue with Carol, and honestly, I think it's fine if the reasoning had been better on Carol's part.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that turned me off more, was that she stayed away because she didn't want to disappoint her over, what she ended up causing on Hala, the Kree homeworld. That is such a stupid reason.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not saying that she shouldn't like have an arc where she feels
guilty.
No, have that.
Oh.
But to say that that's the reason why she stayed away for so long is so forced and so like contrived. Like, I rather would not have had a role to play at all in the movie if this is what it was, because it was so stupid. It did not work at all on any level.
Yeah, and honestly, for me though, it feels like that kind of reasoning is like her, because of what she did with the Kree. I feel like that should be a reason why she should go to Earth more often, because she wants to stay away with what she did. I think it would have been great for her for a character arc for her, if
But
like
it's contradictory too, because like I mean, are we sure she never came back? Because we see memories where she's visiting Maria.
but that was only when she got blipped.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's why there was the line of like when Monica comes back and she literally says she got blipped, like there's no way, and so she was probably with her like in her last days, which we don't know that, but that would have been a great line for her to have
Right.
if like I stayed with her in her final moments. But I don't know, like you could have said, but like
You know, I gotta say this. I don't think the material that Monica Rambeau was given was really great on any level. I don't think the material that Carol Danvers was given. I think there was some meat to it, or I should say there could have been, but the way that it was treated was so passe that it kind of like there's something also even the villain Darben. I think to me the most interesting moment she had was when her henchman told her that her saving her planet would cost her own life. And she was like, if that's the price that has to be paid, then so be it. And we so rarely have villains like that.
Yeah.
However, her actions in the film suggest otherwise, that she was just another standard cartoon villain where she was just like killing people left and right. And I feel like, again, there's things there. Even the moment where the Marvels are rescuing the Skrulls, but I think you had something there where Kamala was like, well, we have to save everybody. And she's like, no. And she shut her down. We have to save who we can. And they could have played with that, but they kind of just drop it in the next scene, and there's no more further conflict.
Yeah, especially with that line though, when the Skrulls were in the ship and Kamala tells one of like the kid Skrulls, Miss Captain Marvel will fix all this and all that, blah blah blah. And I'm like, wait, hold on, you just saw a moment where she couldn't save everyone. You like don't praise her. Like
also, what is she doing? She's about to just dump you on somebody else.
I know.
Which in and of itself was like, I gotta say, I do like Tessa Thompson as that character, so I was like, oh, it's cool to see you again.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, it was just so bizarre because the scene in the movie, we're treating it as if like we're supposed to know that these two have had any kind of communication, much less a relationship with each other. And I'm like, why? What? This is the first time we're seeing you two speak words to each other. Like you're trying to think that we have like, and I guess they kind of kiss and they hint at a romantic thing, which I'm not opposed to.
Yeah,
I would welcome if they would actually like do something instead of whatever this was.
Yeah, I just did not like that. She came in, she gives her this like advice, or what was the advice? It was like you can't handle everything on your own, that kind of advice, which like
it's basically like Ahsoka in the Ahsoka TV show where like she was a loner and like she needs to be a team, she needs to be part of a team or something, which also was like, okay, that also feels like a very manufactured thing to put in there. But again, you kind of have to when we don't really know who this person is. I guess.
Yeah, we just didn't see any struggle that like she was. It was basically the same thing with Ahsoka. Like we didn't know if her being alone was kind of like messing with her or anything like that. And but then also like even though they were a team, we never saw a moment where they saw her as the leader, which I feel like they probably should have, especially because she's like the strongest, But there wasn't a moment like that, and it's just weird. All of these have wasted potential.
I mean.
Yeah, and I like the idea of Tessa Thompson's character coming in, especially because like maybe all the other Avengers have their own thing that they can help out with each other. It's like, hey, I got this person here, need this place to stay.
Honestly, if anything, I kind of wish she stayed and we just dropped Monica.
For real though.
I mean, because she's got great presence.
Especially if like they were in the relationship, Kamala would have been like, oh my gosh, the
shipping
fanfic, them, the fanfic she wants to write. She would have been like fangirling the whole entire time. And
I feel like I love how we're just like writing a better movie almost instantaneously.
I know.
Oh, we're reviewing this movie. It's like the missed opportunities, man, that were there. Also, as far as disappointments are concerned, Um, I feel like there's 3 things I want to say about this area. Captain Marvel, the movie itself, I feel, should have revealed to audiences about how Marvel either doesn't know most of the time what it's teasing, or they're just openly lying to your face about what they're teasing.
Yeah.
Because when everybody saw that end credit scene in Infinity War, after Nick Fury gets blipped, and you see the Captain Marvel logo, everyone's like, oh, the Captain Marvel's going to come out next year. And everyone was of like, she's going to be such a powerful, member. She's going to be integral to the events to save the universe. The only reason people watched that film and it made $1 billion was because Marvel convinced their audience that that character was going to play a pivotal role in Endgame. That did not happen.
Yeah.
That was a lie. That was lie number 1 here. Lie number 2. WandaVision. At the end, one of the credit scenes, Monica Rambeau meets with a squirrel. A squirrel. Oh my god, I just said squirrel. That's funny. She meets with a squirrel, and she asks where he wants me to go, where Fury wants me to go, and then she points up. She's gonna go into space. It's gonna be like this big thing, and it's the Marvels. And then we begin this movie, and she's just in space.
Yeah.
Oh, and she's already learned how to use her powers.
Mm-hmm.
And we never established what they even were in the first place. So even if you did watch WandaVision, you still feel like you skipped a couple of chapters in this character's story, and you start in a place where it's like, oh, this was what you were teasing? Okay. Number 2. Now number 3. Miss Marvel and those stupid bangles. This was what you were teasing?
Mm-hmm.
That's it?
Yeah. What were they? What was the name of them?
Quantum something?
Quantum
bands. That's another thing. This movie, especially in the middle of the movie, I mean, it got to a point where I was like, what the fuck is going on? A lot of the conversations that the Marvels were having on the ship was so bogged down in like techno babble. I tuned it out. I'm like, what are you girls even saying? Like it got too sciencey. The words that they were using, or the technical terms, that I was like, what? I think I stopped paying attention at that point. So, but yeah, okay. So that's what the bangle can do. That's what you were teasing to?
I know.
Okay.
And it's still, I still don't understand how it activated her powers.
I don't understand how that's connected to Monica Rambeau or Captain Marvel. I still don't what are these the only 3 people in this whole MCU that have light related powers?
Mm-hmm. Also, just another little nitpick, but so the reason why Kamala is connected to them too is because of the band, because the bands created that purple thing, and they, Monica and Carol touched them. Why wasn't the villain teleporting too? Especially when she had it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that would have been so much fun. Like, she just shows up and she's just like, what the fuck is going on? So like, she just takes it off, and that gives them time to like, and not to worry so much of what she's gonna do next or something. She's like, she has to keep it off, and she can't do much without it. So I don't know. I think it would have been a lot more helpful, a lot more fun.
You just reminded me of another moment that I thought was funny, where they're in the con house, and Carol asks Monica, when did you get powers? And then when she walked through and then Monica says that when I walked through a witch's hex, and then this was so funny. It cuts to Kamala's mom, where she says, I'm very happy for you. Where's our daughter? And that was really funny. Like,
no, everything with the family was always hilarious, honestly. The way they were reacting when those Kree people were attacking them and everything. the way they reacted afterwards when they were cleaning up, and then they all just, especially the mom, she was like staring down at Kamala, like, "Look what you did." It was so funny. Um, I mean, yeah, those moments too, where where they had to leave and everything. They was kind of like wished her luck. Like that was so great. This
I
they
mean,
did it
like,
right, putting
yeah.
all of them in it.
Also, good on them. Like, it was. I mean, it's silly that they even were able to put up a fight, but it was funny how the brother, the mom, and the dad were like holding their own against those two henchmen when they're. I mean, I was like, what?
Mhm.
But hey, good on them.
Yeah.
They were able to do something about that situation. But that's the thing about it, is like every time they're on screen, I think the movie works. And it just makes you wish that the Marvel people realized how much potential there was in a long form, long term Miss Marvel TV show.
Mhm.
Like if Miss Marvel was actually, made like a TV show, I think we would have already had 2 seasons, and season 3 would be coming pretty soon.
Mhm.
And Miss Marvel should be a multi-season TV show and with her own things going on.
Mhm.
And I think this cast, this family has proven that they could do it for many years.
Yeah.
But I mean, who the hell knows when we'll ever see any of them again?
Especially because Iman Vellani, it really seems like she wants to be in these movies. Like she's the one that's having the most fun in this entire movie. We
Mhm.
mentioned, Samuel Jackson's just kind of like phoning it in, just doing whatever he wants to do. But like Iman Vellani looks like she's really having fun
Yeah,
in
and,
this role.
and I think also her, like, most of her moments work, but there are some moments where I feel like it did get her shtick got a little bit tired, and they
Yeah.
should have done a little bit again. If there was sharper writing, like when she said we have our heading, when she was impersonating Jack Sparrow, like we have our heading.
Oh really? I don't remember that.
No, there was a moment, yeah, where she did
The
that.
biggest standout was, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," and I was just like, no. The only reason I laughed though was because of Monica's reaction, like the way she stared at her.
Yes,
She was just like,
yes.
no.
She was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes the reactions do work really well. I still think I had a blast with the musical sequence, dude.
It's just so funny. I love it, especially Kamala. She was just into it. She's dancing the entire time. Monica though, hers was hilarious. She was trying to like get serious with this, but like, but she had to sing in order to communicate with them. So she was just like, "Where is your king?" or something like that. So like, it was just she couldn't mix with them, and people were noticing too. Like they actually called her out on it. Like someone can be a bit more could try to be a bit more fun or something like that. Like they actually pointed it out at her, and then towards the end when Carol was dancing with the king and all that, she was like really getting into it too. Finally, it was funny, and I like the cats.
Yeah, the Flurkins were great.
That was great, especially when I don't know why I really liked it with Carol. She sees one of the kittens eat someone, and she's like, "No, spit it out, spit it out." And he's like, "No, we're doing. This is the plan. Like they eat everyone. We put them all into one ship, and they can go." And she just goes, "Come here, kitty." It's just like it starts grabbing them. Like I found it funny, and then just the whole montage of it, and then what was it? Someone in the speaker going, "Let the cats eat you. You'll be fine."
But would they have been? Like,
I don't know.
That's the thing. Like,
it was a risk, but like I don't know.
Those are so funny.
Mm-hmm.
The Flurkins. Ultimately, you could have. Also, again, the power set is inconsistent.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes the switching wasn't consistent either.
Of course.
Yeah.
I don't think the visual effects were terrible.
No,
I think there were some moments where you could tell they weren't great, but they weren't terrible here.
No, yeah, there wasn't as bad as the others, as like compared to Love and Thunder and Quantumania.
Yeah, but, for sure.
It's still
and you know what? I think we already said, but like the 3 leads, they're actually fun to watch. So that makes up for. I mean, they're most of the movie. I will say that I think to me, the overwhelming feeling I had walking out of it was This would be really amazing quality if this was a made for Disney Channel original movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Like this is the kind of stuff that I expect from a Disney Channel original movie. Like I would even say like watching this, it feels like a made for Disney Plus movie instead of a theatrical film. But because it is in theaters, I think that even hurts it even more
Mm-hmm.
because this is what it is. Yeah, it's nice, light, breezy fun, but what was it? I think Matt Neglia of the Best Picture or the Next Best Picture podcast was reviewing the film with his team, and he said that he noticed how disengaged and uninvolved the audience around him was with reacting to this movie. And in my audience, it was quiet, dude. Like I kind of felt like people weren't caring.
Yeah.
And I heard maybe the odd giggle here and there, but this didn't play clearly based on the ratings that we just read with the cinema score. This isn't playing well, clearly.
No, I heard a couple laughs in the movie. You know, they got some, but guess what's on the big reaction from my audience? The
Nothing at all to do with the movie, right?
Yeah.
It comes at the very end, and you know what? If we're gonna just go ahead and go there now, this is the part where it brought things back down to earth for me. Because you know what? Up until that crap happened, I was like, wow, I'm actually pretty entertained. I'm having a pretty good time here. And then, and I felt it coming.
Mm-hmm.
We're in that scene with Kamala and Carol in the airplane, which was really nice and sweet. And I'm like, this is where the movie should end, but it's not going to, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Because now we have to turn this back into a Marvel episode, and we're robbing the film of what would have been a pretty standard ending, but a good ending otherwise. Is now we're ruining that ending, and the ending is just more setup for things that no one cares about. I don't care about, and it actually kind of pissed me off in actually a variety of ways.
Mm-hmm.
For one, I think to me that whole last scene was a bridge too far in the utilization of Kamala's humor. I thought that was just downright cringe.
It was cringy for me only because she used the exact same lines as.
That's why. It's like, again, it's the MCU sniffing up its own asshole and like saying we are the best, and we're gonna, and we know you know what this is, so we're gonna do this, and you're gonna be in on the joke, and you're gonna laugh with us, right? And it's like, no, that's no.
Seriously though, literally take out the lines that Nick Fury said in that after credit scene, and just have the ones that the new ones that she had, and it would have been great.
But it also should have been a post-credit scene, not the ending to this movie.
That's true.
Like, okay, what is the ending to this movie tease Young Avengers? Which, talking about not caring, who cares about Young Avengers when there are no Avengers?
Mm-hmm.
And you can't even make your other characters work.
Mm-hmm.
So that I'm not interested in. Okay. Then what follows? Oh my God. It takes it to a whole different level. First of all, I don't know if you feel this way, but I thought it was in poor taste and downright disgusting to have a scene where Monica wakes up in that alternate reality. She sees Maria Rambeau, but we know almost immediately that that's not her mom.
Mm-hmm.
But she has this overwhelmingly emotional, like she starts crying, like she's committing to it all. And then she's just like, okay. And then I don't know if it was played for laughs or something, but it almost felt like it was really mean to make Monica Rambeau go through that.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of a reveal. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's when I say that it felt like it was in poor taste, that's what I'm talking about. Like, oh, why?
Mm-hmm.
And then we get the reveal that they're in some X-Men universe Beast is there, played by Kelsey Grammer, who played him in X-Men: The Last Stand, I believe.
Yeah, the voice sounded familiar.
It was exactly him.
Yeah. But why CG though? You already had it on costume. I mean, I know they probably thought like, why
They
spend-
don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care. Also, I don't think Kelsey Grammer wants to put the makeup on and
That's what I
everything.
thought too.
So he's older now, so I don't know if that's what he necessarily wants to do. But like, ultimately, I'm like, why? Why is this here?
Yeah.
Like, I guess they're just like, what they're gonna do with X-Men is they're gonna bring back all the old X-Men for a final hurrah before they reboot the whole MCU and then do the MCU version of X-Men, but for real. Either way, though, these scenes added nothing.
Yeah.
They made me. I mean, the first. I actually, you know what? That's not true. They both pissed me off in different ways, and it reminded me of like why I'm like, why I feel the way I feel about Marvel these days. You?
No, yeah. For sure the after credit scene just, oh my gosh, I heard people going, "What? X-Men?" And I'm just like, guys, come on, this is like really, like you do.
I'm
You say
surprised.
nothing.
I'm surprised they didn't play the da 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 da.
Oh my gosh,
I
right?
was so ready for them to play that song.
Or like that one they did in Miss Marvel. It's just, but nothing. And then yeah, like I said, I just, it would have worked that moment where she recruits Kate Bishop, but I just want you to put the exact same lines. It's too meta. Like I
Also,
can understand. Good.
I'm sorry. Did you notice how this movie at all didn't even address that tease for Miss Marvel? Because the ending of Miss Marvel the show was the da 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 da. Like, oh, is Miss Marvel the first mutant, the first X-Man?
None I mentioned. Not a single word.
Like, nothing. Not that I was expecting it to be a big part, but not so much as a slight mention when apparently there is an X-Men related something in this movie. It's just it's so strange, and it's things like that that make you just like think, is anybody, are the lights on upstairs at Marvel? Like, hello, is anybody really in charge? Because it all just feels like they're all presenting themselves in that they're related to each other and they're like building up to something, but they really aren't. They really aren't. Yeah, it ultimately makes for a movie that's not good. Honestly, in a lot of ways, it's pretty bad. And yet somehow I was entertained by it.
Yeah. If you enjoyed Miss Marvel, if you like Brie Larson, I guess, as an actress or something, I don't know, maybe you'll find some enjoyment in this movie.
But it also, I think, I think the most important thing is, no matter what, this should have been a great movie. And you see greatness within the dynamic that they have. And it is honestly enraging how we could have had that, but it's also very revealing how Marvel didn't know what to do with this. They had no idea what they had to do. And in some ways, because of that, they ended up releasing one of their more entertaining projects of the whole year. I mean, I'm sure everybody would say, well, I shouldn't say everybody, but you said you preferred this to Quantumania and Secret Invasion.
Yeah.
I mean, that has to mean something, right? That has to be a positive of some kind. So, and it's also just upsetting to me because with the film not doing well and doing really bad in places, it's going to become yet another scapegoat. Or not a scapegoat, but it's going to become, they're going to use this failure, the right wing anyway, as yet another female-led project that didn't end up being very good from quality. And it's like, look, it's really shitty, dude. Like, this keeps happening. Think about this. Think about it. She-Hulk, Ahsoka, the TV show, The Marvels, Wonder Woman 1984, Birds of Prey, Captain Marvel, Black Widow. Like, those are all major, female-led projects in this space. And they all kind of were seen as failures.
Mm-hmm.
All of them. And so Marvel really more than just like it's for its own sake monetarily, I feel they've let down women. And they're continuously letting down their female fans, because all this does is reinforce this really problematic and ultimately false idea that when women are left to be the leads of projects, that equates to bad quality. Because we've already said it on the show already. That's so obviously not the case. But when more and more and more and more of these projects continues to be this lackluster in so many ways, it just creates a really bad look. And so I would hope that, if nothing else, for nothing else, they would get their act together for at least this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so toxic and sad that this is where we've at. I really am curious to see what Alexis would have thought of it if she had seen it. Just as I'm also curious what she would have thought of this next movie we're going to talk about. Because I have a feeling she would have been salivating about some of the things that happen on that one. So we're going to leave it there, guys. Yeah. Go see it or don't. It's up to you. It doesn't really matter to us.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about our main movie review today. This is a film that won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. That's the big prize earlier this year. It is a French film directed by Justine Triet, and it stars the amazing Sandra Hüller. This is Anatomy of a Fall. It is one of the major awards contenders. It is the Cannes Film Award winner. Unfortunately, because it featured a lot of English, it was disqualified. Or I shouldn't say it was disqualified. France chose to go with a different movie as the pick to submit for the Academy Awards category, Best International Feature Film, which is honestly very disappointing, because not only does the quality of this film merit its submission, I do honestly believe this probably would have won that category. And now it's not going to be in that category, but it's also weird because Anatomy of a Fall is still being considered for potential nominations in Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Screenplay, even though it won't get an international nomination because France chose to go with a different movie. So, what happened, David?
No, I'm just shocked.
Okay, I know, right? So, that drama, award season is nothing but drama. This is like a lot of, really, that choice? Anyway, so what is this movie about? The description on Letterboxd is so funny. Did she do it? A woman is suspected of her husband's murder, and their blind son faces a moral dilemma as the sole witness. We're going to do the very best we can to talk about this film without giving it away. There, if we do feel the need to have a spoiler conversation, remind me, David, to announce that. That way people who haven't seen it can skip it.
Yeah.
Because this might be one of the few films where I'm thinking we're gonna probably need to get into it, and if you haven't seen it, it's gonna ruin it for you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, watch this.
Yeah, for sure. So, dude, I was this movie is fucking incredible. Can we just like say that out front? Like that, like I was literally on the edge of my seat. Like it to me, this movie is a lot of things because it kind of is two different things at the same time. To me, I think this was so good in how it handled its mystery that it kind of becomes, in a way, a new standard for how to do this. But at the same time, it is very unconventional in how it treats the mystery, in comparison to how most movies in this, like, I guess, courtroom drama genre would treat it. You know, the courtroom drama movie are basically like Lifetime movies, you know, where it's like, you know, the beginning, you know, the middle, you know, the end. And usually it'll be a happy ending and good wins. And it's very simplistic and it's very basic and they're very procedural. And they're so commonplace. Like there's even whole TV shows that do that and have done that for a long time. So what I think is impressive about this is that, not only was it able to sustain the mystery all the way through, but it was able to do that because it didn't give you the things that all the other films that do stories like this give you.
Yeah.
In a way, it could be considered a spoiler, but I'm not going to say it. Like,
well,
there's nothing simple about this. There's nothing easy about this. It's not spoon-fed to you. A lot of this film is presenting everything as is, and you are left with every step of the way trying to figure out, in some instances, what actually happened. But in some ways, what's more important here is why it actually happened. You know?
I mean, just to kind of explain to people listening, like, they're trying to figure out if a wife murdered her husband. But there's no evidence. The only thing you have is a body. And that's it. So, like, how do you figure that out?
Did she do it?
Did she do it? Yeah. And so, like, how do you figure out whether someone even had the motive to kill someone, you know? And so that's just the whole mystery of it all. Are you trying to figure out if she had a motive or not? And
if she had a motive.
Yeah, if she had a motive, yeah. Or was this just a freak accident?
Yeah, the basics of this is that the husband falls from a high, altitude. He dies, and immediately early on in the film, it becomes apparent that the wife is going to be a primary suspect.
Yeah, that's what you see this in every procedural show and movie. It's always the husband or it's always the wife and all that blah blah blah. So they have to investigate her, and I think even the lawyer tells her too. It's like, this is just what's gonna happen. So you gotta be ready.
I mean, we could see coming a mile away. It's like,
yeah,
because like, look, I mean, we can get into. I want to get into the whole, experience of watching this film, but because if it's going to really rely on giving things away. I'm going to withhold that for a moment, but I do want to say that it's not an easy digest.
Yeah.
You will be left with a feeling of mystery. You will be left with a feeling of being challenged. But what you also will be left with was one of the most exhilarating viewing experiences I've ever seen. Like, the film is just like tension the movie.
Yeah.
Like, it ping pongs back and forth from one point of view to the next, and you're like, what the fuck? And like, huh? And it's like, how is this even allowed? Like, there's so many moments where it's just like, damn, this was just so good. But also in the way that it's filmed.
Yeah.
You know, like it's so different too. You notice there's some like really like at some moments it feels like it's handheld, or you have some interesting zoom ins. Go ahead.
It's basically like a combination of cinematic / documentary style.
Yes.
And I love, and like the transition to those is almost seamless. You know, at one point, you know, when there is just in their house and all that, you know, that's very cinematic. You're just kind of like there. But then when it comes to the investigation, then that's when you get into the whole
when they're in the trial. You mean?
There were some moments when they were trying
okay.
when in the investigation too that kind of got into documentary style, and like you mentioned too, like a lot of zoom ins, just kind of like shaky cam stuff and everything, and like that really does help you get into like, it makes you feel like you're in the courtroom or something, or you're with the investigators, like trying to figure out this whole thing with them. It's just, it was really interesting, the camera work. I definitely noticed that.
No, for sure. Like I agree with you. Like, it did make it feel a little bit more documentarian, but it also made it feel more real. It made you feel more like you were there, like you were seeing like an actual freaking trial. And it also, I think, enhanced the performances of the actors because of how it was presented. It wasn't in this like really like Hollywood glitzy and glamour and like flashy way with like all this like dramatic lighting and shit. Like, think of The Judge, that Robert Downey Jr. movie from a few years ago. It's not like that at all. It's like, it's just presented as it would be as if you were there. And it really also in some moments lingers on certain reactions. Like, even like there's this really important sequence where you know, Sandra, our main character, is explaining she's responding to her husband's psychiatrist, and what the camera work really helps in enhancing the performance is especially of where the camera is positioned. You're not only hearing what Sandra is saying, but you're also seeing how she's saying it. You know, and I feel like it's doing two things at the same time. Like, you're seeing her as she is, the words that are coming out of her mouth, and you're seeing her think in real time how they're coming out of her mouth. And it also just makes you wonder, is she for real? And that's part of the magic of this film, where well, before I even get there, I should say that Sandra Huller is she's amazing. For and sure.
So is the kid.
Like, what?
The kid.
Oh, yes, they're both. I mean, every actor in the movie is great. Like, the prick prosecutor. Oh my god, I hated him. Right? Like, everything he would do, I'm like, what the hell is going on here? In moments, it felt like a kangaroo court. It's like, is this really how things are? Like, if I read a tweet thread by Brendan Hodges, he was saying how he couldn't tell if the courtroom scenes were a melodramatic farce or if the French criminal justice system is actually insane. The prosecutor ended nearly every instance of cross-examination with a sassy or snippy closing remark. And like, is it just like that there? I was also struck by a major difference between the U.S. criminal justice system and there, where the prosecution and anatomy, they made constant and sweeping suppositions while declaring them as fact. What someone would or wouldn't do in a marriage,
Mm-hmm.
what someone would or wouldn't do in depressed. Like, so there's that's a whole different conversation, but that only just adds to just the bizarreness,
Mm-hmm.
but then also just like the tension going on in the movie. So at this point, I want to say that Anatomy of a Fall is a superb film. It is one of the year's best movies. I think I'm hoping for a Best Picture nomination for this one. I think it is well worth your time, and you should definitely go and check this out, because you will literally be on the edge of your seat and you'll be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So many times, which is why I'm sure Alexis is gonna love this movie, and I'm so sad that she's not here to talk about this movie.
As soon as I finished the movie, I was like, "You need to watch this." Like, like go with Dad, like find it, down with Dad, and watch it together because you're both gonna love it. I know it.
Yeah, it's really good. So
And it isn't
yeah,
out anywhere, like on Amazon or Hulu or.
it's out where it's out.
Okay.
It's out where we saw it. But actually it is played in some theaters, or at least it was, but not anywhere near me. I don't know about you.
I don't think so. I haven't seen anything about it, so.
I don't personally think so, but it was playing in some theater. Maybe it was just a New York and LA thing, but I don't know. I do think others were playing it, but it's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. The performances are good. The direction is good. The writing is good. Like, I'm sorry, like this is, to me, this is, I think a lot of the categories that it's being like discussed are very deserving, in case, if in fact it does end up being nominated in those categories. Okay, so what? Okay, where do you want to start? This is now spoilers. Where do you want to start off with this? This was crazy.
Oh, man.
This was so fucking crazy, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to ask you, do you think she did it, or because to me,
do it?
yeah, because to me from the very beginning, I was like, she didn't do it. Like, I don't know why.
I was going the other way. I was like,
really?
I was like, because okay, so you're saying from the very beginning it felt like she didn't do it.
Yeah.
I was like, it seems pretty overwhelming, because what else could have fucking happened? Now, but at the very beginning, and mind you, at the very beginning, we know basically nothing. We have no context, because then by the end of it, there's so much more going into it. And because we know basically everything by the end of it, it almost feels like we still know nothing, because all it asks us to do is like, what is this really what justice is? Like, there's no evidence.
Yeah.
There's no way to know. That's the thing. There's no way to know what actually happened. So what we're left with is trying to figure out, just to do our best guesswork. And in and that of itself feels like a farce. So, but to answer your question, initially, I'm like, I felt like it was leaning in the direction of she did it. Like, she pushed him, and that's how he died. That's what it was looking like to me. And I think, like, early on in the movie, when she's first meeting with her lawyer, you tell me, reading him, I mean, he said in that scene, be ready for an indictment or whatever, but like, and he never says what he thinks in the whole movie. But if you walk into a situation like that, I'm sorry, how do you not, like, that looks bad.
No, yeah, I understand. Like, if you're thinking, there's, what other explanation is there? Like, she must have done it. Like, there's no way he could have just fallen from the attic or something. And so, yeah, it's very understandable. But like, I just kind of went, okay, this whole thing is going to be about whether or not she did it. And for me, from the beginning, I just thought she didn't do it. I can't explain to you why, in the beginning at least. But later on, though, the that fucking dude, what was it, prosecutor? Uh, he was just shooting bullshit. I'm sorry, but
It was bullshit.
it was okay. So I mean, let's just get on with the case. So they were trying to figure out, how he fell. They had two scenarios. One where he just straight up jumped from the attic and hits the shed, I think, and then slides down. The other one is that they're on like the second floor or something,
Uh-huh.
and she might have hit him, and then that's how he got this dent basically in his head, and he fell down, which explains the blood spatter in the shed. And so yeah, they're just trying to figure out all these different things, and one big thing that happened was the kid. He is blind. He was out just walking around and outside. He's the one that finds the body, and they tell him like, "Did you hear your parents argue?" And he goes, They seem to just talk normally. I was outside, and I could hear them talking and all that, but they were like, but there was music playing. How could you hear them with the music playing, especially when it was super loud?" And they recreated that scenario, and like they were talking normally at first, and you couldn't hear it and all that. But and to me that was one of the first moments though that I was like, you're really pushing it that she might have murdered him, because
You're reaching here, right?
Yeah.
How is this allowed? Like,
Yeah.
it almost feels like, that, okay, maybe it's the closest reenactment, but that's not the same thing.
Yeah, especially because, okay, fine, they're talking loud, but that's only because there's music playing.
Yeah.
You still can't tell though, like, are they talking loud because they're yelling at each other, or are they talking loud but still somewhat speaking normally? And so with the kids' memory about that whole thing, I think they should have just taken into account, like, if the kid says like this is a normal conversation, then like you gotta take his word for it. And I kind of wish he would have like stood up for himself at the end, where he would have been like, "Okay, look, I heard them talking, but I am very confident though that this wasn't an argument. Like this was a normal conversation that they were having over loud music." I kind of wish he would have done that, but like, I mean, what he did.
It felt very opportunistic of the prosecution team to take advantage that this was a kid, because and they just like, it felt like they were inflicting their will on it, and like they were able to just steamroll over him and make him doubt himself because of that. And so they used it and just kind of like ran with it, basically. But since we're on the prosecution and that prosecutor, I was impressed by just how far he was willing to go. Like, it got to, like, it started off pretty, like, okay. But then, like, I'm like, the whole thing ended on his side, I think more so than the other side. Like, I think that the defense team they came off looking very like, as a matter of fact, in comparison, because I think the prosecution like really overplayed itself. Like, we got to points where like we were having about like there was a moment where like they asked her, "You're bisexual, right?"
Yeah.
Guilty. Like, what the fuck? Like, it was, and then the point where it was like I was losing my shit was when they were reading out of her books. I was like,
oh my god. And
they were reading out of her books, and they were trying to connect one of the characters that she had written in her books that didn't but thought about killing her husband, and trying to extrapolate that into any relevance into the trial. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah, and I love their argument though too. Is like, is Stephen King a serial killer? Like, oh man, no, but yeah, no, that prosecutor though, like when he was talking to that lady that was doing the interview in the beginning and all that, and he was trying to be like, she was trying to like come on to you, right? You know, it's like that clearly.
I was so uncomfortable.
Oh my god, how was she not comfortable, right? And um like he was just trying to point out his evidence was just trying to figure out if um he got the husband got her basically mad enough to like want her to commit murder or something like that. Like that was his whole defense, but it was just all bullshit. Like he was just trying to extrapolate whatever he can, and then especially with that recording when oh my gosh, we'll get to that. But um yeah, just everything that he was throwing out, just it was all bullshit to me, like right from the very beginning. And I don't know if that's maybe because again I believe that she was innocent from the beginning. I'm very curious if someone was kind of like, she might have done it. What if
Well,
like,
that's where I came from, David. Like
yeah,
I thought that it was looking like she did do it from the very beginning. But then what I think part of the way that the film made me doubt my initial assumption was this prosecution
yeah,
and how fucking like sanctimonious they were and how like they were just reaching left and right about like situations of like what they would or wouldn't do in that situation. It's like, do you have proof or do you not?
yeah,
That's the thing. And clearly there wasn't anything. Like there was no smoking gun like anywhere in this. So yeah, it really left a bad taste in my mouth. The way that the prosecution was behaving. That being said, of course, though, it didn't mean that they were entirely without merit because, I mean, this looked all kinds of bad for Sandra. Like,
for sure.
A lot of things, like, and it's one of those situations where, like, everything needed to go her way, to be able to, like, and I mean, to me, what was interesting is I had no idea who would win. And ultimately, that's a different answer to like who actually did it. So the whole time, I had no idea who would win, but I also had no idea who actually did it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, though, in addition to the prosecution turning me off, I think the way that Sandra presented herself in the trial and how she is, like, I think a lot of people would be questioning about how reserved she is and how normal she sounds, or in some instances how unemotional she sounds, and might be thinking like, well, there it is, you know, she's not a very caring person, so she obviously killed the husband. But I'm like, I don't know. Ultimately, to me, the way that she was conducting herself through the entirety of that trial endeared me more to her.
Yeah.
It made me actually want to be on her side, and especially because it felt real. It felt natural in the way that she was allowed to explain herself and her rationale, which was also really different because in the U.S. criminal system, when you're questioned, you're not allowed to just like go off on tangents like that. Here, she was explaining and explaining, and I feel like the more she explained herself, the more I kind of was wanting to believe her because it kind of was making sense. But then part of the nature of the movie is, as the trial goes along, so much new information, you know, is presented. And every time that happens, you're like, twist. And it's like, oh shit, here we go. So, for instance, when they play that recording, ooh,
yeah,
she did not come off looking great.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing with that recording.
Which, by the way, that might have been the scene of the movie because she went like Sandra Hüller went all out in that scene.
Yeah,
and you know what? I don't know what it is, but I gotta say, like, it kind of reminded me of Marriage Story in a way, weirdly enough. But that scene where they're blowing up with each other. But I kind of like, I don't know how you feel about it, but like, more so than it just being like a gasp moment in the trial. I don't know. I was really, even though they were becoming aggressive, it was a really interesting back and forth of how this relationship like was not working anymore
Hmm.
for these two people. But I don't know. The more it kind of had the opposite effect of what I thought it would. Like it didn't look great for
Hmm.
Sandra because it made her look like she was aggressive and maybe more open to just being violent. But as far as the actual conversation that the husband and wife are having, I don't know. I think like she actually came off looking like a more emotionally mature person, and I think she was right. I think
Yeah,
he was putting all his shit on her and having unrealistic expectations.
for sure. Because like she even says it, like everything we've done so far has been your decision. Like we moved here because of you. You made these renovations. You decided to do that. You wanted to homeschool our son, and it's like you're putting it off on me. And then he's like, oh, I was like, I want you to help more with the son's school. It's like I drive him all the time. He's like, you drive him once. It's like, yeah, he only goes twice a week, and his aunt drives him the other day. Like, what else can I do? Or like, I mean, obviously, like in the driving situation, not like his education or anything like that. But like, yeah, it's just that scene. Even though chances are she probably isn't like putting her weight into this relationship, maybe, because like, yeah, maybe she isn't doing much to help her kids' education or something like that.
Mhm.
Maybe she can do more um to help out around the house or something like that. Like we don't know. But my question for the husband was like, did you even ask? Like, did you even say like, hey, I really need a break, can you do this thing real quick and like I can like relax or something? But also though, here's one thing. He says he has no time to write because he's doing all these types of things. But once a week, the wife drives the kid to school, and they're far away from people. They're from like a long road. You can't take that time. I know it's a once a week thing, but like you can't take that time to kind of be like, oh my gosh, finally by myself, and like just relax or something. I don't know. And then he's doing all these other things, and she's just writing perfectly. She said like, yeah, I can work around this noise. Like I don't mind it, but he can't and all that. Like I mean, I don't know if I want like if I'm coming off like mean towards the husband or anything like that. And it's just, and I'm not like this because I think she's innocent or anything like that. But I was literally like, dude, your wife is right. Like you made all these decisions on your own. Like why are you putting it on her? And then that moment though, he brings up the kid and all that, and she's like, don't not bringing him up. And then the fucking prosecutor brings up the kid, being like, do you resent your husband for like causing your kids damage and all that? And she's like, and that was such a great moment for her too, because like, how do you explain to someone like, of course I was mad. Like if he hadn't done this thing, if he had done this thing, our kid would have been fine. Like our
Yeah.
kid would have been, we would have gone on with our lives. We probably wouldn't be here right now, you know. But like he didn't do it. It caused this thing. But I'm the one that's adapting to this fucking situation and going like, my son is still my son. He can still do more than what his situation has made him. But the husband didn't seem like he could adapt too well.
No, not at all, right? So I think I'm with you 100% where that scene made me even more put me on her side. And it got me thinking like, wait, what? That's the point where I'm like, maybe she didn't do it. That was the point where I'm like, something more is at play here than what we realized. Because I don't know if maybe I don't, they speak too fast. Some subtitles I don't catch in time. So I guess you had the same thing, but it was revealed that he had recorded that conversation in secret. And in that conversation, part of what they're blowing up at each other is that he is resentful of her for taking an idea that he had and writing her own story with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, to me, if you have a problem with that, then the time and place to have brought that up was
When it happened.
when she was writing the book,
Yeah.
not after all this time, because all it does is make you look like you're just jealous
Yeah.
that she could do it and you can't.
Mm-hmm.
But why did this recording exist? Because they found this on a file.
Mm-hmm.
Why would he record this conversation? And at first it makes you think like, oh, maybe like he thought he was legitimately in danger. Otherwise, why would he record this conversation? But then it's revealed that he always records parts of their life. David, you wanted to say something?
I was gonna say I thought he did it so he can have evidence against her. Like he did it, like he killed himself on purpose to like try to make it seem like she murdered.
Like a promising young woman situation.
Yeah.
That would be pretty funny. But it's revealed, I missed it, but I think it's revealed that the reason he recorded that was to use as inspiration for his own writing.
Mm-hmm. He still couldn't write a book.
Damn, man, picking on the dead.
They showed like the wife, like she puts in her own life into these books. You know, they mentioned like certain parts of her life. She put it in her books in fiction and all that, and she was selling. But you know, then the husband though he started recording his life. You know, he really wanted some inspiration, but he still couldn't do it. Like, come on, man, you just sorry, but maybe you just didn't have it. Or I mean, maybe he did, or just like I think the wife said, like he just kind of was too afraid to like put his stuff out there or something.
Man, it just makes me wish. Couldn't have Trump been indicted in a French court? That would make for like the best show ever. Just imagine like him commenting on every part of the trial. Would that ever end?
Oh my god.
That probably would never end.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god. But yeah, that was I think the beginning of like the turning point for me where I'm like, something more is at play here. And then they introduce another element of him being suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
Which, when we first hear about it, sounds suspicious because like she all of a sudden remembers that. And then she calls her lawyer. And it feels like an advantageous strategy for her to all of a sudden remember, oh,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, he tried to kill himself. I forgot about that. Can we use that to help me out? That's what it came off as.
Yeah,
it really
at
did. First.
Mm-hmm. No, but I mean, like at the same time, though, like that was really their only defense. This was just say
suicide.
He was suicidal, and so like I don't mind them like leaning in on that. I mean, it sucks. It does suck for the husband, and it sucks for the son that he has to see his dad that way. But ultimately, though, you kind of have to like rethink a lot of things happening in that moment, and especially like when you do listen to that recording in the context that he might have been suicidal. It really is kind of like the wife was just like throwing shit at him, being like, "It's like this is on you, buddy." And
I mean, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But then something else happens. There's like this hush that comes over the trial where the judge is like removed for a second. Then she comes back. And it's not revealed until later on that Daniel had further testimony to add. Okay. Which was strange that came out of nowhere. And then I was like devastated. That also kind of like that also made me second guess it even more so when he said, I want her to leave.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't look good.
Mm-hmm.
Like she like it kind of made me feel like, oh, maybe he remembered something that And now, because again, it fools you. It
Mm.
makes you think like, oh, maybe he found some evidence that she did do it, and that's why he wants her to go. You know, and her crying as she was going down that was a powerful, powerful moment. And I swear to God, what happened next, I couldn't have foreseen in a million years. Like I was like the next few minutes, I'm like, what the fuck? There's a scene after he does what he does, and he explains to the guardian that's there with him about basically him poisoning his dog, and then the camera cuts to the dog hearing them, and I laughed so fucking hard at that cut because it looks like I'm not even joking. Like, cause like the whole clip is like Daniel full on crying, like, and then it just cuts to the dog. You'll see right now. So you see him. He's crying here. I'm holding it up to the screen.
Yeah.
He's talking about poisoning the dog, and then it cuts to him, and he's like, he has the face of like, what the fuck? Like, look at that. The dog's just like they're staring at him after what just happened. And the whole thing is because I swear to God, I did not know where this was going.
Yeah, same.
Like, what did you think when you like?
Honestly, for a second, I thought the kid did it. Like, if he was psycho enough to poison his own dog, like he must have killed his dad or something.
At that point, it comes out of fucking nowhere. It's like, why is he giving his dog drugs?
Yeah, for sure. But then he explains it, and I was like, "Oh, that was so risky, but kind of smart." I don't know. It's just like cool for trying to really defend your mom here in this moment. Because okay, so basically the plan was he wanted he gave the pills to the dog. He was hoping he would throw it up, but he gave him too much. He was literally dying in that moment. Luckily, the guardian was able to make him throw up. And the reason why is because that day where the wife mentioned that the husband committed suicide, he noticed the smell in the house, and he thought maybe the dog might have thrown up or something. And so his thesis, I guess, was that the dog. Oh no, sorry. That day that the husband committed suicide, for the next couple of days, the dog was drinking a lot of water and sleeping a lot. Like it just kind of it was acting strangely. And so
when he attempted to commit suicide,
and
he threw up, and the dog ate the vomit.
Yeah, ate the vomit, which in turn had the pills, and so he was trying to recreate how the dog was reacting to the pills, and that basically happened. He ate the pills. He started drinking a lot of water. He started slowing down a bit. And so he kind of thinks now the husband did try to commit suicide with pills because the dog ate it.
Yeah. And so he then presents this to the courthouse, and it's hard to know exactly how that's being received. Obviously, the prosecution immediately goes to dismiss it. But then to everybody's surprise, he actually has more to say. And honestly, because I was so thrown off, I wasn't sure in the moment if what he was saying was true.
I know.
Or if he was making it up. You felt that same way too, right?
Same. I really wasn't sure if he was telling the truth. But at the same time though, how would he have come up with that? How would he have come up with
it's a very specific conversation.
Yeah. And so it probably is real if he was able to make all that up, he probably just remembered the whole thing. So it's hard to know, honestly, but that was my first thought too. Is he making this up?
Because it came so last minute.
It's
he was asked, is that it? He takes a moment to think about it, and then he actually says it. But that testimony, I think that's what did it. I think ultimately that's what saved his mom. saved Sandra was that bit of testimony, with the hindsight that we have now, helps the argument that it was a suicide. And so it's also really interesting how the choice was made to have her win not from inside the courtroom, but as she walks out and it's revealed that she had won.
Yeah.
And then, we see her celebrate with her lawyers. They're more happy than she is, because ultimately, she, what?
I love her explanation of it. It's like,
Right.
when you win, you expect the prize, but like, I'm just going home.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of like, goddamn, what's next?
Right. And the thing about what makes it even more unconventional is films like this usually end at the trial verdict, no matter which way it goes. But we then follow her back to her home, and we have these really, really interesting long takes where she's just back in her house and she's living. She's moving from space to space. She sees her son, and then she goes back and lays down. The dog joins her. And I don't know what you think was going to happen. It almost feels like in any other movie, what would have happened here would have been the grand reveal that it was her all along that did this.
I was waiting for like the murder weapon to like come out or something.
Yeah, like because it kept going, and it was like, uh-oh, is this the part where she's like, and here is where I tell you my grand plan situation. But that didn't happen. But that also doesn't, like, the movie ends and it really, I don't know how to feel. Like, I mean, I walked in thinking that she did it. And then as the movie was, turning me around, I was like, I don't think she did it then. Because I was buying into her side of a lot of the arguments. And then the end, I'm just like, but the real answer is, we can never know. Our best guess is, I think what makes the most sense is that he did kill himself. But that's still kind of far-fetched, and that's still just kind of guesswork.
Yeah.
We never, and honestly, she honestly could have done it.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I mentioned it when we were listening to like the recording of it. Like, chances are she wasn't, the best wife. They mentioned that she had like a couple of flings during their marriage, but that was only during the time after the kid's accident. So, their marriage was being rocky and all. But, it just, obviously it wasn't perfect. But the movie doesn't really tell you if she's like murderous in a sense, like,
no,
if she really can't commit a murder, especially when the prosecutors were trying to say like, oh, she like these blood spatters show that he probably got hit like in the head and all that he fell down. But like they were also saying like the defendants were kind of like, yeah, but the thing though is that dude would have to be leaning all the way back in order for the blood to get to the shed and everything. Like, and so it's kind of like she would have to be in some like fucking rage in order to do what she did, in order to be capable of like committing that specific murder,
right?
And we just don't see that in her. Not even like in the recording. Like, I mean, yeah, she mentions that like she slapped her husband and all that, but like that's a slap compared to like what she probably did in the murder. So
So I guess the answer to did she do it beats the hell out of me.
Yeah.
It was such a great watch. It was such a great watch. The ending is kind of haunting in a way because it's like, well, what do we do now? And I kind of want to watch it again because it was so good. Honestly, it was like really, really good. And easily one of my favorites of the year. Anything else to say of Anatomy of a Fall? Go watch it. Even though I'm sure people who are, I mean, if you had already tuned into this part, you've already seen it. I'm hoping, and if not, go see it.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's still great. I forgot to mention this one part of the recording.
Yes.
The part where the husband was like mad at her for not learning French.
That
That was so dumb. Like he's like, "Oh, you still don't know French and all that. Like you're not trying to learn my language." And she's like, "I'm German. You don't know that language, and I'm using English as a middle ground for us." Like, like what the fuck kind of argument is this?
yeah, honestly, the husband came off so unreasonable.
Mm-hmm.
So unreasonable. Like, so it's like, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he killed himself.
Yeah.
But who knows, man?
Mm-hmm.
Who friggin' knows? Anywho, we're gonna go ahead and close it off there, folks. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for listening. Catch a podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts every single Sunday on Red Spotlight. Thank you, David. Stay on our spotlight for more content, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.